way back, he was studying abroad in Germany, and he wasn't sure about the internet. So he's like, listen, man, I'm going to be in Germany, and I want to deal with this. Take over my fantasy baseball team.
I already know that this late round perspectives episode is going to be the longest in the history of the show.
I had meetings later today, and I told people that this is all up in the air now because I'm going to be going on with JJ.
Yeah. I mean, would you agree? This is going to be probably I think the longest was actually the last perspectives I did. I had Waldman on a couple weeks ago, and which is ironic that we have the Waldman to Kelley. I know that there's been a little historical beef between the two. Yeah.
Very, very long time ago. Very, very long. In a galaxy far, far away. A fantasy galaxy far, far away, where I was very eager young man, trolling on Twitter, looking for takes I disagreed with so that I could rip them apart on my podcast. And sometimes they would get back to people.
Yeah. I feel like though you've grown a lot from that perspective, right? Like that's not what you really do anymore.
Only because they don't have time.
To that degree. I'm saying
I would.
You have been a controversial analyst in your history.
Oh,
you would agree. You would agree with that, yes?
Yes, and I just want people to know that say, oh, I'm selling out and I've lost my edge and all those things. No, it's all there. It's just I'm very busy with two companies, okay? And I just can't dig in to the bad takes on social media like I used to be able to, and listen to all the podcasts I used to be able to, so that I could, really lean into that on the show. Now I just have to come up with my own takes and just trust the process.
You just need your own awful takes.
Yeah, now I'm just stuck with myself. I'm stuck with that's all I got, man. Fortunately, over the years, it wasn't just about ripping apart other people. It's about coming up with your own approach to things. I know we're going to talk about that today. I'm excited to talk about it. Your own process and figuring out what matters. And it's years and years to get to that point. So now, fortunately, as I no longer have some of those crutches, I have this other sort of body of work that I've built up that now I have a prism through which I can analyze players and situations and strategies through. So I feel good.
Would you say, because I think that anyone that listens to my show knows that I'm a generally agreeable person, just in my nature, right? I mean, you and I have talked countless times in real life and interacted in real life. Yeah. And so the way that you approach things is, or historically, I'm not saying that that's, we just went over all of that, but like, would you say that that's just part of your nature to want to almost play the WWE heel at times as an analyst in the space? I think, because I want to come at this from the angle of maybe someone listening to this show who has heard you in the past and, sees me talking to you and we're having this conversation, right, and they're curious about our approaches, because our approaches to that kind of thing are totally different. Like, obviously, I think Waldman has some brilliant stuff that he brings to the table. I wouldn't have had him on Perspectives, last week. I think he's a great human as well. And so I only bring him up because that's one of the many folks that you've talked about or talked about their takes and such, like on your show. But is that something that is innate, or do you think that it's something that you have forced a little to make more entertaining content?
I was a class clown, and I was always bothering the teachers, and I was always I don't know what it is. Right? I don't know what it is. I don't know what my problem is. But I am looking to, mix it up, man. I'm looking to mix it up. It's interesting. I was just thinking about this. When I came up, the talk radio was still big. Sure. Mike and the Mad Dog and all that. And I used to listen to Dan Le Batard. And he used to really have these big time back and forths with Stephen A. Smith and many other people. Mm-hmm. In the current landscape, especially with podcasting now, and influencer culture.
Yeah.
You get a lot more rewards for just sort of being a nice, calm human. So you see a lot of the people that are maximum successful, they're not necessarily pushing the envelope. They're not necessarily, hey, waving their arms around, look at me. Hey, I'm gonna start fights with someone because this is a WWE style spectacle. Turn whatever radio show, podcast into that. And so that's the era I grew up in, and I'm still wired that way. Right. But now I look around and I'm like, well, actually, if I were reverse engineering this just to have maximum followers and maximum sort of reach, then I think that you're better off now if you're getting started in the content creation in any industry. You're better off just sort of being yourself and a nice, calm, level-headed person that doesn't have these sort of emotional issues where you're starting conflict and you're trying to get attention. Maybe I think I definitely had a peak moment, but this was like 7 years ago, and now that approach doesn't fly like it used to. It doesn't get the traction that it used to. It doesn't help you like it used to. And fortunately, this is just dumb luck that I no longer have time to do that anyway. Right, so I've been naturally evolving with the space, and that thank God, right? I don't even know if I don't think it would move the needle like it used to.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that everyone that consumes, let's just talk fantasy content. Anyone that consumes fantasy content is gonna, pick their flavor and stick with whatever flavor that tastes best, right? And that they appreciate the most. And so, like, if someone's like, "Oh, I don't like your 15-minute podcast. It's too boom, 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 boom. It feels too scripted," even though I'm just, I'm saying things over and over again to make sure that it can get into that 15, 20 minute, because that's what people like. A large number of people want because they have a 20-minute commute or only have so much time. My response is, maybe I would get offended like 10 years ago when I first started doing a lot of this stuff, at least in front of a larger audience. But my response now is like totally cool. Like I'm not going to hate on you for not liking the presentation. When the feedback that I read about my content is about the tone of my voice, well, that's just what God gave me. That's something that I can't actually really control. So that's actually if that's the worst thing about me that you feel is about, it's not my analysis, right? It's the way that I sound. It's the way that I get excited and my voice rises and stuff, okay, fine. That's just the way that I am. And I can't really do anything about that. So like that to me, people are going to like whatever they want to like, if they don't like that I will be agreeable at times, I'm still going to push back. We're going to have a conversation today, Matt, where we're going to disagree on stuff, and I'm going to push and ask you questions and wonder why, because I think that's important. I've done that. That's part of the reason why I wanted perspectives in the first place, is because all week long, people are just getting my takes on the podcast. So let's get other perspectives. Let's get someone else on the show to where I can ask these people about the things that I've been talking about and see what their angles on those things are. It's not that I'm avoiding conflict completely. I'm just not going out there and saying, hey, your take is trash. you're an awful analyst.
This is why this is a misguided approach to analyzing a particular player. That multiple Reddit threads dedicated to the Podfather and why I'm awful. So
I'll say this.
And reading that, I gotta say, I have to admit, kind of feel like I'm winning there. Kind of felt like I was winning in those situations. And
I'll say this in front of everyone.
I'll always feel that way. I'll always feel like, hey, yes, there are people out there that will never listen to me again. But there's a lot of people devoting a lot of attention and a lot of space, a lot of headspace to criticizing me, and that isn't that bad. I'll forever believe that's not again, nowadays in 2025, that you just don't see that nearly as much, especially in fantasy football.
Yeah.
I do look back. I do reminisce, once in a while. I think a couple months ago, someone sent something and I stumbled back upon an old Reddit takedown of me. And I was just sort of flipping through, just reminiscing like, oh man, remember back when they really hated you?
Yeah. See, like you do have a part of you that feeds off of that. Whereas I have no being of my body enjoys that. Yeah. Literally no part of me. I just want to create content and talk fantasy football and hopefully do well at that. Right. And come up with really cool and unique and new ideas. But I want to wrap this up by saying this. I've known you. We've seen each other at conferences. We sat next to each other on the plane. Remember that flight that we took? What was it, to Nashville? Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Where you had a layover in Charlotte, and it just so happened that we were on the same flight. And not only were we on the same flight, we had seats literally right next to each other.
Fate.
And we just sat and we chatted, the whole way to Nashville. I know you well, as a human. You as a human is or are a better person than what others would probably perceive you as based on some of those things. I want to say that.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
You can put that on Reddit if you want.
Yeah, I'm not. People on Reddit can run and say whatever they want. I'm one of the few fantasy analysts that kind of enjoys Reddit. I go on there all the time, and I'm going back and forth with people and talking to them and thanking them if they're shouting out my guides or something like that. Like, I think it's a decent community when you're just not if you're not prepared, like you're at least prepared to be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take some heat because I'm being a dick right now, right? I'm just kind of like, look, if people are going to be kind, then I'll show them kindness back. That's great.
It is good content though. Like if you don't have if you had no individual analysis to critique and you just wanted content, it is to read some of the negative feedback about you and then fight with the nameless, faceless critic. That is always good content. You can always fall back on that.
You can fall back on it, but I wouldn't recommend it. All right. I want to talk about you though. And I do this with everyone on the show. You have a pretty unique sort of journey in the space, your process within the space and what you provide. So just start to finish, the Matt Kelley show. How did this all come about?
Well, I like talking, as you can already imagine. And I like talking sports. And I started playing fantasy. Well, if you really want to go back to when I really started playing fantasy, like in its most pure form, when I was in middle school, my friends and I, we took football cards and we'd lay them all out on the floor. This was before the internet. Okay, right. Just so everybody knows, very old, very crusty individual, and this was pre-internet, pre-AOL.
I'm old in the space now.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
You remember when I was like,
oh, you're a young pup.
Young. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Late round quarterback, the book.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. So cool. I was like, look at this kid. This kid's a go-getter.
Literal kid. Yeah. It's like 23 years old.
Go-getter. Love it. So so we were laying out all the football cards, and then it was sort of like a fantasy Dungeons and Dragons. Fantasy football meets Dungeons and Dragons, where we would pick all the cards and then we would just narrate the season as it would play out with these, just amalgam teams of players, which later would be called fantasy football, but we just kind of made it up with football cards. And so I remember doing that, and a buddy of mine sent me a T-shirt of of the game we used to play, and it was like, cool. Remember this? Like, this was actually fantasy football, and I'm like, oh my god! So then took over a fantasy baseball team for my buddy who was traveling. So again, way back, he was studying abroad in Germany, and he wasn't sure about the internet and his ability to manage his roster. Especially, with lineup lock, a weekly, a daily with fantasy baseball. So he's like, listen, man, I'm going to be in Germany. I don't want to deal with this. Take over my fantasy baseball team. So picked up Rafael Furcal. He stole 70 bases in the second half. It was incredible. And then I was, enjoying that. Quickly started a fantasy football league. In that league, I was the first to draft a tight end and the last to draft a quarterback in my first draft.
Wow.
So, right?
Look at you.
Right?
Setting trends.
I started, I remember how I started that draft. Marvin Harrison, Tony Gonzalez. It was good. It was a good team.
Pretty good.
It was a very good team. So then always distracted at work, always creating fantasy leagues, always trying to, getting a group of people together to hide from our boss how much fantasy we're playing.
Yeah.
Right. And then that company ended up getting sold. And then I moved to Connecticut and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. And I was in this new thing called podcasting. And I was like, we can do, the fantasy sports podcast, started a fantasy sports podcast, and needed all this information at my disposal, at my fingertips, and started creating what would become Player Profiler. So Player Profiler was built from the perspective of a podcaster who was just looking for confirmation bias of his own positions.
Right.
So I need numbers and data to back up what I'm saying. I need to be able to pull it up in an instant. That's how Player Profiler was architected and created. So if next time you're on playerprofiler.com, remember this moment, like, oh, actually, yeah, this makes sense that a podcaster needed this data at their fingertips. That's why it's designed this way. And so then the two things would feed off each other, where people would find the podcast and then they would find the website, or find the website and find the podcast, and the flywheel starts, and you're experiencing the same thing with late rounds. So it's great. And a few years ago, there was this big boom with Best Ball. It was MFL 10s, then this draft app, and then people that did the draft app did the Underdog app, and everyone was very excited about Best Ball. And I was like, this is a revelation. You can just draft 150 teams, and then you can really home in on your exposure and kind of figure out, okay, how much Jamar Chase do I have versus Justin Jefferson versus Amon-Ra St. Brown? And I love this idea of portfolio drafting with Best Ball. And I assumed this would take over fantasy. And then a funny thing happened. No one did anything with Best Ball after Underdog. Everyone's like, well, Underdog's got this.
Yeah.
Right. And they do. They've been doing a great job ever since. But nothing new came along. Everyone was just trying to be the next prize picks. So there was no new Best Ball game. So I said, hey, if I do anything from here on, it's going to be to actually build a fantasy platform where we can do more with Best Ball, because Best Ball, I felt, was reaching a cap and how many people it could reach. A lot of my friends weren't playing because they didn't know Ray McLeod. They didn't know the Week 17 schedule. And so I thought, well, there's got to be a way that we can simplify Best Ball and make it so that 50 million people that play fantasy can play Best Ball. And that's when we created Fast Draft, where I was like, okay, I haven't seen anyone do this yet that has a podcast and a website to just decide they're going to do a fantasy app. That seems to be like two different worlds, right? They seem to always be coming from two different worlds, the fantasy platform
typically,
people. Right. Yeah. It's like that. And
then, I think back to that, like it's only like the ESPNs and the Yahoos of the world who from a media company perspective, that's what they were. Right. And then they built these games after the fact, but you very rarely in the new age, this is all obviously back like 25 years ago.
Right.
In the new age, you just get this segmented, you're either like a content site or you're a gaming site, if you will, or a gaming platform.
That's right. Yeah. They seem to be very, like, I was always wondering, why did football guys never roll out a platform so people could play fantasy football on the Football Guys platform?
You hear that, Joe? You hear that, Joe Bryant?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I was always thinking, it was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And then I started exploring the process, and I was like, oh, these are all these complications. This is why only certain companies end up doing a fantasy football platform and going all the way with it. And then I was like, you know what? I think I just need to try to do it, even though some might discourage it. We did Fast Draft, the Fast Draft app. And now essentially you just draft 6 guys and the top 4 enter your lineup, and that's the core game. And now we're rolling out a 15-round game, and we have an all-defense game. We have an all-rookie game called Origins. And a lot of these are live now, and it's becoming very popular. And I'm very blessed that there seems to be some real grassroots momentum around the game, which we haven't seen in a long time. Like, there hasn't been a new fantasy app that's really gotten like a grassroots push. Like Fast Draft. So I'm just very, very blessed and working very hard. But still not going to give up the podcast.
Yeah.
Right. Not going to give up Player Profiler, not going to give up the podcast, because I get asked this all the time. And I'm like, why would I?
Right.
What do you mean? I did this.
I mean, I'm assuming time would be the why.
I know, but no, you can make time. Then you make a compromise somewhere else. I didn't do this so I could. I got into this from the beginning.
Yeah.
As a podcaster, and I just don't see any reason why it ever stop. Every year we get a new draft class. We get a whole bunch of new rookies. We get a whole bunch of new situations that come up.
Sure. And
it's fascinating every year. I mean, one day I'm probably going to look up and go, Jalen Knoll doesn't interest me. Mm-hmm. And, I don't have a good take on Rashee Rice and how he there's a range of outcomes where he doesn't get suspended at all. And he's a total smash in best ball.
Sure.
But I have those takes and I like talking about it. So you're stuck with me, everybody.
We've had this we had a conversation, a couple of them early on when you were first starting to think about Fast Draft. And I remember, I was just like, you're crazy, because I know what goes into creating content and I know the hours and the effort and all of that. And I enjoy it. So like I came about it from the perspective that I'm very content. I don't have this like aspiration to build this giant fantasy platform gaming company. And that's the difference between what
you told me a couple of years ago. You weren't going to build a website and you're just going to do a podcast.
No.
You weren't going to do this. And the thing is, because you're so excellent at what you do, success just sort of follows you like a lost puppy. And
I can guarantee you, I am never going to be that kind of entrepreneur in terms of building out a game.
We'll see.
Right. Yeah, I'll get. Look, if someone wants to old takes expose me in 2030, feel free, because there's no way I'm going to build a game. That's just not happening. It's not happening.
Sure,
0% chance that happens.
Oh no,
yeah. I can't even tell you how little desire I have to do that. I'd rather sit on the toilet for 24 hours than do that and do nothing but feel awful with my bowels. Than
I have to say, you are not wrong.
That's what I'm saying.
It is very painful, and it does feel yes.
Well, that's like it's like whenever
it's humiliating. There's some humiliating aspects where these state regulators, they want to know everything about you.
Of course they do.
And they want to make sure that you are humbled. And so it has been a humbling experience. Maybe that's part of the softening of my approach a little bit. Who knows?
Maybe. But here's the thing. I feel very lucky that I came from the perspective of, I got a job at a startup in the fantasy space pretty early on, right? At Numberfire. We then got sold to FanDuel. So I worked at a gaming company for 8 years, right?
Yeah.
At FanDuel. I knew, maybe 7 years. I now got experience and exposure to that, to both the startup world, like the true startup world, not like what I'm doing with late round fantasy football. I mean, like raising money and trying to go that route. And then I got exposure to the gaming side of the business. And, I walked away and I wanted to do this because this is exactly what I want to do. And it was hilarious whenever I started late round fantasy football, the number of people who would approach me. And look, I feel very lucky and blessed that people did approach me in the first place, but they're like, well, instead of doing this, why don't you just write content on our site? And I'm like, I literally just walked away from all of that. Why would I just want to go right back?
Right.
Like, that's not the point. The whole point is that I want to do this because I can do the type of content that I want to do. Have no one overseeing it. And this is what I'm passionate about and what I love. I am obsessed with doing the prospect guide and talking about prospects and updating my model and doing all of that. And I feel very lucky that there are sickos out there who are ready to consume that stuff, Oh. And so that's why, like, when you make the jokes that eventually it's never, this is what I want to do. This is what I was meant to do. And I don't want to do anything else.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But like, that's not even, I literally am saying that to the world here, to whoever listens to Late Round Perspectives, that like, I am doing exactly what I want to do. And there is no better feeling than feeling that contentment about what you're, doing with your life. It's just, I don't want to change that. Why would I change it? Anyway, I like the shirt
one thing
reveal
I just
there,
want to be very clear about, though. Okay.
Yeah.
You're very talented. Okay. Like, you know how to do web design. Okay. Sure. Like audio engineering. There's a lot of things. You have a lot of skills and you have a lot of just natural talent for presentation and the way your brain works. It's just uncommon. So it's just,
thank you.
These are facts.
I don't need to hear. You don't need to be. This is Matt Kelley's Late Round Perspectives episode. This is about you, Matt. This is about you. I appreciate it. I mean, it does mean a lot. I appreciate that. How did you? So what got you more into like the prospecting side? Like, what was it that made you feel that? Because I feel like you've always just done more Dynasty content, and you've always sort of focused more on Dynasty content.
Yeah, I had one of the original Dynasty podcasts, the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast, one of the first.
So what was it? What was it that made you attracted to that side, the Dynasty and the prospecting side, as opposed to the typical season long one?
Well, I think one of the early edges we had 10, 15 years ago was better understanding of rookies and better understand and having to, even though right now we have a flex 4 game on Fast Draft where you just draft any running back, wide receiver, tight end, and guess who's available in the 6th round of these all flex drafts? Judkins, Travion Henderson. And I'm like, well, okay, these guys are being drafted at their worst case outcomes. What if they land here, right? Then where are you going to draft? Any of these guys lands in Dallas. How many rounds are they going to jump up? If they land, pretty poorly, they're just going to be where you're drafting them now. So it's like, even today, 10 years later, there's still the people that are consuming a lot of you and me and our content. They're playing on Fast Draft, and they're still hesitant to draft Travion Henderson, and they're drafting James Conner instead. And it's like, what is happening? So this was always the case. It was even worse. Like, it was even more inefficient 10 years ago. So we really thought that was an edge. And that was part of the thing we leaned into with Player Profiler, which was, let's go find all these workout metrics. Let's go find all the vertical and the broad jump and all these things. And let's present this to people in a way that's easy to find, because it was difficult to find. So a lot of these advanced stats and metrics, it was difficult to find and calculate. Let's present them in a way that's much easier to digest. And it just so happens that in seasonal leagues, in DFS, we were getting maximum edge with rookies. Like when there would be a free square running back in DFS and it was a rookie, that's where the edge was maximized. And so then that just naturally led me to have this affinity for the NFL draft. And then naturally you're like, hey, there's this thing called Dynasty where you can have these guys for their careers. And then a lot of these guys that I liked, they had a season that was just derailed for whatever reason outside their control, but they were good. And so now I can actually be on the winning side of a position, even if the immediate season isn't a success. Like if I liked Roma Dunze, I can still like wave the flag for him in a couple of years and feel good about it, which probably will be feeling great about it. So that was the appeal of Dynasty, and Dynasty has really grown. It's the growth industry within fantasy football that if you looked at the different verticals, there's a significant growth in Dynasty. People, I just love that the whole concept of Dynasty trades happening throughout the year, being able to do football analysis throughout the year. And then the high stakes of the rookie draft is also exciting. So I think there's a lot to like about it. And it just so happens to be that was where our edge was early on, and we just leaned into it.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a couple running backs from this year's class. Let's start talking about this year's class. Let's talk about the running back class.
Almost like I wanted to start talking about this class.
I know. Yeah, well, look, you're a podcaster. You know that you got to get the segues down, and I know that you're helping the host here kind of move the conversation forward.
I have access to the show sheet.
That's right. How are you viewing this running back class? Is it as good as the 2017 one? Is it better than that class? Is it worse? It's better than last year's class. We all can agree there. But where would you sort of place this class? Like, are we going to see sort of this like revolution and new wave of running backs stepping into the league and becoming really fantasy relevant?
I have gone on a real journey with this class. This class was very difficult to figure out, super enigmatic. And I had a big show with Rich Rebar, our mutual friend, Rich Rebar from Sharp Football. And we did like a 2-hour and 45-minute podcast. Just go type in Player Profiler Podcast, any podcatcher. You can, episodes dropping very soon. And he really hit something home with me. And he was talking about how not only are these running backs going to cannibalize the existing like landscape of running backs and all these depth charts, that they're going to get destroyed. There's so many running backs in the NFL right now that currently have jobs and won't have jobs as of September.
Yeah, and I would argue more than people realize right now.
A lot.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a lot of UDFAs that steal jobs. And so there's a lot of guys need to be looking for their real estate license, need to be looking at what's the depth charts in the CFL and get that figured out and get out ahead of it. So, and then I was thinking, well, okay, why was last year was such a great class? Right. It was such a great class. And I remember having some debates early on about, hey, could this class potentially, if it hits just right, compete with last year just in terms of overall fantasy points and the fantasy point production that you get from this class? Can it rival last year? And the running backs would be the way, right? The running back class, it's a special running back class. Is it 2017 level special? No, because 2017 you had multiple elite running backs, right? And you had some of the best running backs, like in our model, like, we have the breakout finder, right? It's an app and it looks at all the data that we have and you have a model as well. Leonard Fournette performs incredibly well in models.
Yeah,
as
course.
you might expect.
I'm looking right now. He has a 98.8 score in the ZAP model, which is better than where Omarion Hampton, more than likely, because draft capital will be an input, but more than likely that's better than Omarion Hampton.
Yeah. And so the thing with that class is it was so good. It was so good at the top. It was so good throughout. This is much more 2018 class. Saquon is Jeanty. Jeanty's a lesser version of Saquon. And then if you follow it down through the Chubbs and there's going to be some Ronald Joneses and it's going to be very similar. So I think that it's much more similar to and I wish it was 2017, but the more you dig, the more you realize it's just not. And because it's not, it can't possibly compete with last year.
You mean in terms of the overall class?
The class cannot. The hope with this class is the running backs were so good, and last year's running backs were so bad. Right. Somehow this running back class, if we get some hits at the wide receiver position, and Tyler Warren is what he was sold to be, and if
overall class,
then the overall 2025 class could somehow rival the 2024 class, and I've come to the conclusion that that's impossible, and it's impossible for this reason. The 2024 class elevated all of fantasy football. Just look at the total points scored from Washington from 2023 to 2024 with Jaden Daniels. When you add receiver talent and quarterback talent and tight end talent, like a guy like Bowers that can produce right away, you're expanding the pie, right? You're growing the whole potential for fantasy point scoring across the league by upgrading lots of different quarterbacks, like the backfields for like I said, Washington, Denver, and now Atlanta. There's so many teams had massive upgrades at quarterback, and that actually helps fantasy in overall because the offenses score more points. The wide receivers can perform better. I know that Rome Odunze had some of the least accurate passes thrown his way by a rookie quarterback, but it's going to get better. And over time, like the presence of Rome Odunze being dynamic and making plays that another receiver would not have made will just lead to more points being scored and more fantasy points being rung up in the overall tally. The problem with this class is it's a bunch of running backs that aren't necessarily going to grow the pie at all. They're just going to bump out other running backs.
Yeah, that's fair.
They're just going to cannibalize other guys, and they're going to cannibalize themselves.
Because of the impact. Guys. Yeah, because of the impact that running backs actually make. Like that's the thing that like running backs are so difficult from a projection standpoint when you're projecting. Like for instance, my year 2 model. Where I'm looking at year 1 numbers and I'm looking at the prospect stuff and I'm trying to project how they're going to do in year 2. There's a reason that in the year 2 model, things are anchored more to the prospect stuff than the year 1 production stuff at running back. Because at the end of the day, how a player performs in year 1 at running back is going to be dictated by, maybe that team just had a really crappy depth chart. And maybe the coaching staff was just like, I want to do. Coaching decisions drive running back production more than they will at wide receiver and even tight end, right? Because there's only going to be one running back on the field more than likely at once. Some teams will deploy multiple, but that's only going to be less than 10% of their snaps. And when that's the case, then that means that there's only one running back that's going to be getting fantasy production, throughout that game or what have you. There's just going to be more of the wide receivers. And what you're saying is when you have a goated wide receiver class like we had last year, and you have these quarterbacks stepping in and doing what they did. And you had Brock Bowers step in and be, the obvious tight end 1 now. When you enhance the passing game in the real NFL, you're opening things up so much more to like now a team like Washington, they might address the running back position. They probably will address the running back position in the draft. But even if they didn't, the situation for Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler is so much greater that the talent level of that running back, it's not that big of a deal. It's not as big of a deal anymore.
Yeah, it's just that it's an element that I had failed to consider fully, and now I realize like this is a class of cannibals. They're just gonna go out. They're just gonna be out bumping each other off and eating each other's touches. That's really what this class is going to accomplish. Where last year it really was a blessing, and I think we're not going to fully realize it until we're into this 2025 season. Yeah. We're gonna be like, oh yeah, wow, last year really was helpful to get all these quarterback. Think about the difference between any given target to Gabe Davis in Jacksonville versus a target going to Brian Thomas.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that it plays in the idea that hopefully we see better offensive production across the league year over year, and it continues to grow a little bit. And you're talking about these running backs that essentially are just going to replace other running backs instead of growing that pie, because it's impossible for that to happen.
It's literally, it's Travis Etienne to Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, right. The one thing I will say, though, is that at least we're at a point in time where it's not like the 2017 class happened and then this class happened in 2019, right? Where there has been some, like this is a good point in time for this running back class to come through.
It's a great
because
point.
We're seeing a lot of these older running backs be more like last year's in season long. We saw some of the, not only the best injury rates, obviously for running backs, which really drove why the running back position was so successful in fantasy, but a lot of the aged running backs were also getting a lot of work and staying healthier. And when you get this young class in, that's going to, I think this is the right time for that sort of shift and revolution to happen as well. So at least that timing is right.
It's perfect.
Right. That timing is really good.
We needed a spring cleaning with running back. We really did.
Yeah, right. But to your point, the strong running back class, if you were to look at the 2025 class of all rookies, as a whole, running back is not going to move the needle for the NFL the way that last year's wide receiver class would.
Yeah, and the quarterbacks and everything else. Now, it's deeper than last year. So in a rookie draft, you do want 4th rounders and 5th rounders more than you did last year. Mm-hmm. And no one did anything. Like in this Origins all rookie best ball game we have, I mean, the guy that won last year, he he drafted Daniels and then Allen and then Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy. Still, even though it was a strong receiver class, no receivers were drafted by the winning team.
Yeah.
But the fourth round pick was Tracy. Fifth and sixth round pick were almost irrelevant last year. No one did anything. People were drafting Stover and just trying to get any guy with a touch, any guy with maybe a path to a target, where this year I think you're going to get, because of the running back class,
right,
it's going to be nice.
Hey, before you listen to more of this episode, I want to remind you to check out the Late Round Prospect Guide. The guide has everything you need to crush your rookie drafts this year. You get profiles for 80 running backs and wide receivers who are at the NFL Combine. You get profiles for year 2 players. There's information on the prospect and the year 2 models, and so much more. And once the NFL draft is over, that guide's going to be updated and sent to your email inbox. Learn more about it. Check it out now over on lateround.com. Now back to the show. You talked about all these running backs that are coming into the league and that could take over and remove some of these aged running backs in their positions. I'm actually kind of interested in which running backs you think are at most risk of losing their job in the draft, and then on the opposite side of that, which running backs do you think could be like low key buys right now? Because if you look at their situation. Let's look at Cincinnati right now. I'm not saying this is going to happen. Okay. I'm just giving an example. If Chase Brown only gets a day 3 running back as competition, that's going to be huge for his fantasy value, as opposed to Cincinnati spending a day 2 pick on a running back. Like the difference in quality there is not nothing. So in that case, if you were to guarantee that Chase Brown's competition would be a day 3 running back from this class, obviously it would depend on who to some degree, but you might say, hey, maybe buy Chase Brown right now instead of selling him away and trading him away pre-draft. So are there any like low-key buys, or are you just kind of looking at this and saying this class is too good that I don't even want to risk it and go after a veteran running back that's already established in his backfield?
It's a very dangerous game.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to have to pay up to get Chase Brown. No one's going to give him away just because there's a specter of a running back landing there. Though they visited with Travion Henderson. They don't have any depth behind Chase Brown.
They don't.
So one of the exercises I like to go through every depth chart and look at, okay, if I'm an NFL general manager and a coach and I don't play fantasy football, when I look at my running back room, do I think we have needs or not? And if you're Cincinnati, the Cincinnati coaches and front office looks at the backfield going, we need a lot of help here.
Right.
We have no depth. Yeah, and we were putting a guy that's not great in pass pro and has some flaws in some situations where he was a little bit out of his depth, but he really came through for us. But I don't know how sold they are on Chase Brown, the bell cow in Cincinnati. From everything we're hearing and reading out of Cincinnati, they don't feel that way. So no, you don't need to be a hero going out and taking a shot on a guy, just hoping that it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of risk and there's not as much reward.
Yeah.
So when you're trading for veteran running backs right now, you need to be very, very, very careful. I mean, only the best, right? Like Bijan Robinson is safe. There's like a handful of guys. Jahmyr Gibbs is particularly safe. So guys that are safer are those with significant passing game roles, because there are a bunch of running backs in this class that caught 20 plus passes, but you would never confuse them with a true like target magnet in the passing game.
Damian Martinez.
Right. I mean, but there's a lot of running backs that look like these explosive satellite back plus type players like RJ Harvey, but they're more slashers. They're more Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
They can hit big plays, but they never really rung up big numbers as a receiver in college.
Yeah.
Like if you're UCF, I'm surprised they didn't throw more to RJ Harvey. Then the bottom line is he's actually not that strong of a receiver. And when you go down the board, you see that is a weakness of this class, that they're not as efficient in the receiving game as you might think, because they put up these consistent numbers like, 20 plus catches, 3 straight seasons in some cases. but still at the NFL level, not going to be super efficient as receivers out of the backfield. So that's where, if I'm looking at trading for a running back that's a veteran, I would absolutely want that running back to have high quality receiving skills. And there's actually not that many of them out there that you could even target. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is obviously elite. He's not at risk. Bijan, like I talked about, is not at risk. Most of these other guys, there is some risk. But like when you go down the list, do the Cowboys have a satellite back that commands a lot of targets out of the backfield? No. Do the Chargers? No. Do the Broncos, Texans, Titans? I mean, it's like Tajay Spears, for example. Tajay Spears is at risk.
Right.
Because Pollard's at risk.
Sure.
Not just him.
Yeah, of course.
But Tajay Spears might be a guy that you can get as a throw-in, and if he can fade a running back, he can actually accrue more value, and he will have value regardless because he is a receiving back. The same thing would be true with like a Warren.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, because I think Jaylen Warren, of all of the sort of like established guys, is kind of the most intriguing still to me, because number one, the Steelers don't have a second round pick. That's it. That's one thing.
They don't have a second rounder. But that's what you're afraid of.
Yeah,
the biggest thing you're afraid of is a second round running back pick.
And are they going to make the same mistake? And here's the thing that's really, I want to ask you about this. This is something that's not necessarily like a show sheet related, but Najee Harris signs with the Chargers. Actually, I want to say two things first. First thing, I think your point about the receiving portion of this class is interesting, because in my model, for instance, and I think you bringing up like there are players in this class who have a lot of like decent receiving seasons, right?
Yeah, they're very solid where in college.
And that's where the like because now breakout score at running back for me is based only on adjusted receiving yards per team pass attempt at running back. I don't have any rushing metrics in the running back model anymore. And I look at that and I say, you know what, that does make sense, because overall the class looks good from a receiving perspective when you look at the entirety of their careers, and even best season reception share is pretty strong across the board. But a lot of it is like, when I look at best season reception shares, like the best players that are great receivers in the NFL are typically over like the 15-16% mark in terms of best season reception share. There's a lot of guys in that like 10 to 13% range in this class, which I think what that tells me is, there's going to be something like Brashard Smith is going to be a specialist in terms of being a pass catcher or someone like that, right? Like that's how they project in the NFL, or like a Jaden Blue, let's say, it would be like a Justice Hill type or something at the NFL level.
You just had the whole list just now.
Yeah. I mean,
that is the list
in terms
like
of the
satellite backs that are going to earn targets in the NFL on third down. You listed the two guys.
Yeah, right. But I will say there's obviously Travion Henderson, I think, is a pretty great pass catching back that will be able to play a pretty significant pass catching role at the NFL level.
No question. But wherever he goes, we know
exactly. That's what I was trying to say. Exactly.
Whatever incumbent is there is very much screwed.
Basically, I'm going back to the thing that I always say on this show, which is I see prospecting a running back and I bucket these guys into three really basic receiving buckets. You're either elite, you're just fine, and you're terrible, right? The just fine bucket is very large. That's where you get like the Kenneth Walkers of the world, right? Where they're gonna they could have a spike season as a receiver, and you wouldn't be like shocked out of your mind. But we shouldn't expect that year in and year out from that player. This class has a lot of that, where there are going to be players in this class that have good early down work, and then maybe they're able to get a 10-11% target share in the right environment, right? But I think that you're right from the standpoint that there are not a lot of running backs in this class who are going to command 15 or 16% target shares at the NFL level that we can feel that comfortable with. Now, I want to go back to the established veteran running back piece to this, where the thing that's been really confusing to me is the way that the fantasy community and season long and best ball and what have you have reacted to Najee Harris and not reacted to Jaylen Warren, where the reaction for Najee Harris was, this is amazing. He's going to be an RB2 in fantasy football, obviously, because he's playing with Justin Herbert. And I will say that, of course, the fit with Greg Roman is fantastic with Najee Harris and what he does. With that being said, if you look at the depth charts and you look at what is more replaceable at the NFL level, and you look at the decision that the Steelers just made The Steelers quite literally said, we're going to take Jaylen Warren over Najee Harris, right? So there's like multiple layers of us pointing to Jaylen Warren being a more impactful player than Najee Harris is. Now, of course, Harris could get a great run out. They don't take a running back in the draft at all, or day 3 or something like that. But if you look at their depth chart, I would look at the Steelers depth chart and the Chargers depth chart and say, maybe, you're a big Kenneth Gainwell guy. Maybe the Steelers actually have a better depth chart right now than the Chargers at running back.
They do.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
That's not even up for dispute.
So to me,
Warren's been more efficient the last few years than Harris, and
right.
Gainwell was a kind of steal in free agency.
Right.
He's a nice all-purpose back,
and he's a really good he's a really good duplicate and replacement type player of Jaylen Warren. So I do think the Steelers should be in the market for like an Ollie Gordon type back or something like that to really, to complement but that kind of back,
not that bad for Warren.
That's what I'm saying.
Warren's
that kind of back doesn't
to target.
Yes, that kind of back does not do it for me at all. Like I don't really I'm not like high or low or what have you on Ollie Gordon. He's not someone that I'm like really, really aggressively like, hey, I got to get Ollie Gordon. And I don't think that the Steelers, if they were to get a guy like Ollie Gordon, are going to sunset Jaylen Warren. I don't think that. That's why I think Warren is one of those few cases around the league right now where he's safe unless the Steelers go round 1 or they trade Pickens, they get a second round pick and they go, I can't project that. It's really difficult to project, a team trading up into the second round or doing something like that. I just think it would be unbelievably stupid for the Steelers in their position right now to prioritize running back in round 1 given what they have going on in that team and what just happened with Najee Harris, right? So what I'm saying is that their first crack at a running back is looking like round 3. And by that point in time, you're at least getting the potentially elite running backs, more than likely, at least projectable elite guys off the board. And that's going to give Jaylen Warren some sort of role, here in 2025, whereas
some sort of role.
Yeah, sure. Yes. I'm just saying he's going to have a role because of what he's going to
have a nice role.
I know. And so that's why it's been so confusing to me when I juxtapose that situation to the Najee Harris one, when I see Najee Harris, and not only that, Harris didn't get that much guaranteed money. He didn't. No. His contract is not, it's a 1-year contract. Here's one thing I could see the Chargers do is not be aggressive at running back in the draft and get J.K. Dobbins back or something and go that route.
Sure.
But even still,
no one's saying that Najee Harris didn't get a value bump. Of course he did.
Exactly. Exactly.
Of course he got a value bump. That's fine.
My point is it's not over yet. We got to at least just wait and see, because I don't think that his situation, like, you have to look at the archetype of the running back himself is what you're really alluding to. And is this running back doing something on a football field that is more replaceable? And I think we got 4 years of seeing that from Najee Harris, and the Steelers even acted that way, And so that's why, as a, random dart, if you really, I'm not going after veteran running backs right now. I'm not playing that game similar to you. But if you were to do that, go after the Jaylen Warren types. Like I go back to the situation back when the Falcons were the number 1 team to draft a running back. This is before Bijan, when they had Mike Davis. Okay. And my advice at the time was to try to just extract value from Mike Davis in terms of not selling him until maybe after the draft, because if the Falcons didn't draft a running back, then his value would rise. But Davis was an afterthought, right? You want to do that with the afterthought backs. You don't want to invest in or not invest in a player that a running back that's pricier, because when you're doing it with a cheaper player, that's when you can actually extract some value out of that situation and position.
I'm only interested in the veteran running backs that everyone thinks are going to be replaced.
Exactly.
That is the only, because because the guys that people are like, oh no, he's safe. That perceived safeness is the thing that I am not going to get near.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to touch that rail.
Right.
Like, there's electricity there.
Yeah.
So if there's a team that everyone's assuming, oh, the Browns are definitely going running back in the early second round. Really?
Mm-hmm.
So if I just fade running back and trade for Jerome Ford, who was top 10 in yards per touch, number 13 in juke rate, evaded tackles per touch, number 6 in catch rate last year, just looking at Player Profiler, then Jerome Ford is an efficient running back. And it doesn't matter how good the offense is. If you're the primary back in that offense and you have an all-purpose skill set, you're going to put up fantasy points. You're going to be a valuable player.
Right.
So just fade the few picks that a team has that could blow up that running back, whether it's Warren, whether it's Ford, and extract value there, but don't get in a situation where you're paying up for a player that is actually quietly at risk. There's a lot of these. Okay, so if we go to Buffalo, okay, James Cook is at risk for a lot of reasons, because the depth chart behind James Cook isn't actually as strong as maybe fantasy gamers think, right? Ray Davis isn't. I don't think that Buffalo is in love with Ray Davis.
He's fine.
I don't think they're in love with James Cook.
Yeah.
James Cook is like every running back in this class. James Cook should be in this class. There's a lot of James Cooks in this
honestly,
class.
the closest analytical comp to Cook in the Zap model is Travion, to be honest with you. Like
or RJ Harvey. Like he's
sure,
not
that archetype. Yes.
Yeah, he's much more RJ Harvey actually, because he's just not the receiver that Travion Henderson is.
Sure. I just mean strictly by looking at the numbers.
But we can go down the board. Yeah. Miami, right? You think Miami's a lock to avoid running back? No,
not at all.
Think about these teams that just let a running back go and didn't replace them. They didn't technically replace Mostert. They believe that they need to replace Mostert, that they have a hole in their roster. We don't, as fantasy gamers, think that, because you could just play Jalen Wright.
Right.
What are you doing?
But again, you go back. Wright's a day 3 pick. He's
a day 3 pick. There's a chance
elevating
that
these players.
Doesn't have a job at the end of August.
Yeah.
It's very possible. I mean, Stevenson very much at risk. Okay, Chase Brown. The rumors around Henderson have already exposed how what a dangerous situation Chase Brown is in. Joe Mixon is near the end of his career, and Houston knows that. Jacksonville is looking to replace ETN for the future. You can go down the board.
Isaiah Pacheco is another one.
I mean, Pacheco they're already flirting with and visiting with players. Judkins, Kaleb Johnson. These are all possibilities for Kansas City. You can absolutely see them moving on from a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just have the process that's like, if I hit on a 7th round running back and I flip them pretty quickly, sure, you're going to miss out on a great season from an Austin Eckler once in a while.
Yeah.
But in the aggregate, you're going to come out ahead constantly selling high on guys like Pacheco, for example.
Dameon Pierce, whenever those seasons kind of happen. I think we'd agree that I think Bucky Irving is probably a little bit different from a day 3 perspective.
Well, Bucky Irving is in one of the few, I think, stable backfields where, yes, they're going to have to move on from White eventually. His contract's going to be up. But we know that they really like Sean Tucker. And so this is one of the rare backfields where we know the coaching staff likes all 3 players. It's just that Bucky Irving was so good and had such an incredible work ethic last year that they couldn't deny him, even though they did like Rashad White. Right. And they're all 3 of these guys, including Sean Tucker, are good players. So the Buccaneers are one of the few, I think, safe backfields. Minnesota's also safe because Minnesota only has a handful of picks, and they went out and they traded 2 picks to get Mason.
And they did the Mason thing because they knew that they had limited capital to be able to build up that running back room,
Right. I think there's actually a higher probability that even Atlanta drafts a running back than Minnesota. I think Minnesota might be the least of all. Minnesota, Tampa might be the least probability of all to draft a running back.
Yeah, but a lot of these teams are again, going back to what we said at the top, there's going to be surprise teams that probably even take a day 2 back that you did not expect to take one day 2.
49ers.
I mean,
49ers
you say that
let go of
because
Mason.
They do that all the time anyway.
They let go of Mason. Why? Because they love this class.
Yeah.
This is the most obvious. I mean, just put yourself in the shoes of front office personnel and coaches. It's even easier when we know these guys very well. We already know the sensibilities of Kyle Shanahan. Right. Some of these guys have no idea what the hell this guy's going to really think.
Yeah.
We know what Kyle Shanahan thinks. He salivates over these running backs.
Yeah.
So it's clear that Garendo is not enough behind McCaffrey. We all know it. And so there could be a grinder back landing in San Francisco, someone like Damian Martinez, because if you think about it, that's what they think they might need.
Yeah.
We don't think that. Wait, you have McCaffrey. It's fantasy points. What are you doing? You can't displace our fantasy points. How dare you? They don't think that way. They think we need a grinder back. And then all of a sudden there's some touchdowns and some yards missing from McCaffrey's stat line because of it. Seattle's like, we have a big hole at our number 3 running back. And you're like, no, you don't. Wait, you have 2 running backs. We don't need any more competition there. Next thing you know, Zach Charbonnet's like fighting for his role. Like, what happened? I thought I had Charbonnet was teed up to be the next guy. Wait, what happened? Does Charbonnet have no value anymore? Where are we?
Yeah.
So you can see this roster after roster after roster. Even say David Montgomery, right? David Montgomery feels very safe, but they may be looking to upgrade Craig Reynolds because they have so few needs.
Right.
And like, we could upgrade Craig Reynolds. Next thing you know, David Montgomery's looking up at camp going, oh shit.
Yeah.
This guy's killing me.
Yeah.
Right. Or you hit on Tyrone Tracy. That could be the Pacheco corollary where you're like, okay, I hit on Tracy, I'm flipping him.
Mm-hmm.
Because next thing you know, the New York Giants are like, they're still tilting over Barkley, and they're like, we're not done yet at running back. We gotta go hard at running back. We gotta make the owner happy. Where I betrayed him with the trade, and we have this Singletary motor not good enough. We have no one behind him. We tried it last year. We need to get a couple more Tracys.
Yeah,
we need 3 Tracys.
Yeah,
that could be their attitude. And then you have Tyrone Tracy going, well, he was really good last year. How dare you? And it's like, they're not thinking that way.
Yeah,
they're thinking we need to fill out our running back room. And there's just a lot of these guys when you go down the board from DJ Giddens, we said RJ Harvey. There's so many guys where you go down the board and you're like, well, if it's him versus Devin Singletary or even him versus a Tyrone Tracy, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who's better, actually. Devin Neal is a very good player.
Solid back. Yeah.
A super all-purpose talent, not the fastest, most explosive, but it's only in comparison to this class that when you look at Devin Neal versus NFL running back X, he's far superior.
Yeah.
So this is the big danger where Devin Neal lands in New York. That's not good for Tyrone Tracy, man.
Yeah. Are you of the belief that Ashton Jeanty is generational? And I don't want to throw that word around loosely. I mean, honestly, generational. I mean, like Saquon Barkley levels good of a player here. Maybe even CMC levels good. Obviously, very different backs. I'm just throwing it out there as, is he that good?
I hope so. I don't know though. I don't have enough data on him. He didn't work out. Do you have any concerns
about the lack of workout? Is that?
Yeah, he played in the Mountain WAC and he didn't work out. What do you want me to do? I mean,
my thing is though.
What do you want me to do, dude?
My thing though is that the only thing I really, really care about from an athleticism standpoint with backs is speed score. And what are the odds that it would be such a detrimental speed score for Jeanty? That he would be that bad. That's sort of my way of looking at this. Is like.
Here's the thing,
we know
dude.
His production profile is great. We know he's going to get great draft capital. Those two things combined historically has brought only elite fantasy success.
Athleticism matters in athletics, and you need to be athletic to do athletic things.
Agreed. I'm just saying, what are the odds?
To put up
what are
2,600 rushing yards?
Yes. Yeah.
You gotta be fast.
That's what I'm saying. Like when he did against Penn
definitely
State.
Fast. I'm just saying, it would be nice. It would be easier for me to say he's definitely generational.
Fair. Yeah.
If I had Saquon Barkley level workout metrics.
Yeah.
I do know he's quite a bit lighter now. He's 211. He's not 225.
Yeah. Like
Saquon Barkley. So is he a Saquon Barkley level talent? No. But a generational back comes along. What's a generation? 10 years. It's been almost 10 years since Barkley. So we're due for a guy that we would consider generational. And with Barkley's contract, given the discount that we've seen over the last 10 years on the running back position, as finally analytics starts to permeate these NFL front offices, if someone pushes the button on Jeanty well into the top 10, I'm sold.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because think about it. Like, they are very certain that he is going to be a big time playmaker. I wish the class was a little bit better overall, just because there's just it's a relatively weak overall draft class.
Like from an elite player standpoint,
just from whether it's edge, offensive lineman. Like there's not an offensive lineman in this class everyone's drooling over either. Think about that. Like,
you think that's
Joe Alt
you think that
class.
could lift? You think that could lift Jeanty's draft capital? Like you think if there were more elite players, the Raiders wouldn't even be remotely in the conversation for Jeanty.
Correct. Like if Joe Alt was there, get out of here.
Yeah.
They're going Joe Alt, right? Or they're going Penei Sewell, whoever has been drafted at that particular slot over the last few years.
Yeah.
But there isn't even a Rashawn Slater level tackle in this class. So it's a problematic class in that way. And it's just from a fantasy standpoint, because we have the running backs, and that's the glittering thing that we've been talking about for 3 months. Sometimes we forget that overall, this class is pretty weak. Now, you get reminded about that when you start to see rumors that, Sanders falls out of the first round and whatnot. Then you get jolted back to reality. Like, oh yeah, this class stinks.
Yeah.
God, I can't believe what? Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He's that good. It's going to be exciting to see him play. And like watching Saquon last year was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was really fun to see a running back do things that are special to actually make a difference. Running backs do matter when they're that good. And I think he is going to be a difference maker for his team. And I think he's probably going to the Raiders. That's the place that makes the most sense. But we have seen some pretty crazy stuff. And some NFL teams that we thought were not in need of a running back take a guy like Ashton Jeanty, like, I don't know, the Jets.
Yeah.
Could you put it past them that he's just top of their board? And that's
teams think that way. That's
what they do. They think top of the board, and this guy's a playmaker. And then what would happen to Breece Hall? So I love this is the exercise that we're doing. It's like, oh yeah, this is also low probability, but still, if this happens, how fun.
Yeah.
If Jeanty goes to the Jets, he's still going to be almost as valuable as would he have gone to the Raiders.
Sure.
But then maybe we get Breece Hall going in a trade to Washington, something like that, where it's like, that's even better. That's that's the best case scenario.
Yeah. Omarion Hampton is generally considered the consensus RB2 right now. Do you agree with that? And then my other question, my follow-up to this would be, if he does go round one, let's say he goes in the 20s or something, maybe early 20s, would you be taking him over Cam Ward in Superflex rookie drafts? And then I guess I'll also say, which running backs are you taking over Ward? Like, would you take any running back that goes round one? Like if Travion Henderson goes round one, would you take him over Ward, or are you just Ward 102, good to go?
I'm very thankful that I had this podcast with Rich because we talked about this. And there are some things that I've changed my mind, having great analysts on, I changed my mind. This is one of those areas where I'm not ready to change my mind. I'm not ready to go all running back over Cam Ward as Rich is. I'm more of a take the 101 quarterback in Superflex. That's my general disposition. Unless it's a Jeanty level running back, then I'm going to go Cam Ward. That's just been my approach here. The one guy that could get me off that is Henderson because of what we talked about, the difference making as a receiver and the fact that he is a great pass protector, and you can easily see him getting 175 carries. And if he gets 175 carries, then he's getting all the valuable touches that exist in a particular offense out of the backfield, which is just delicious. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been waiting for another Alvin Kamara type player. If he lands in the right offense, if he lands in a place like Cincinnati, see, that is so good. Like, oh wow, what if Henderson goes to Dallas? How great would that be? I'd rather see him in Cincinnati because Chase Brown does not matter at that point. And now he's in the most prolific offense by far and away, where Burrow was number one in every counting stat that exists last year.
Right.
And it's not like their defense is getting any better. So that's where you could get 25 fantasy points per game, Alvin Kamara 2020 type season from a Travion Henderson. He's the only one that has that in his range of outcomes, where Hampton is this big, rocked up, box stuffing guy. But it's also possible that he's just a better version of Zach Charbonnet at the NFL level.
Sure.
Travion, I know, is like a more electric version of Alvin Kamara. That's just a fact. That's what he is. I know there's really no other way to analyze him when you go back and see what he did as a freshman. It's crazy just go back to his freshman year. I love whether it's receivers, running backs. Freshman year matters, man. When you put up 1,200 plus yards as a freshman
on that team,
6.8 yards per carry on that team, where you don't think they had other great running backs on that roster?
I mean, even the fact that he had the receiving numbers he did with literal like Pro Bowl wideout after Pro Bowl wideout is crazy. Yeah,
it's crazy. So I've come to the conclusion that it's all about Travion at the 102 now.
And that's if he gets first round capital to you. Like if he goes round 2, you wouldn't be thinking,
how is he gonna fall? I don't see it, man.
You think he's gonna go round 1? You're saying?
I think he's going round 1.
That would create a really interesting diet, because I think my model would still like Hampton over Henderson because he just checks the right boxes, right? But I think that would be one of those situations where I'm just gonna let landing spot kind of dictate, which direction I would go between those running backs. Rankings wise, because like if Hampton goes to like Denver, but then obviously if Henderson goes to Denver or something in round 1, then that would be more attractive. But the point
I'll agree with you 100%. Our model breakout finder, same thing. Hampton is number 2.
Yeah,
Hampton's RB2. I think when you're looking at the cloud of data that's available and what's predictive, Hampton is number 2. But I'm looking at how do I hit on the highest upside in the range of outcomes. That's Henderson.
Yeah.
Right. Because our model just looks at what's the probability you put up 1,000-yard rushing season or 200 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Right. Or like 1,200 plus like all-purpose yards in a season. Give me one season of that. It's not like what's the probability you put up 25 fantasy points per game in a season. Well, I think you have to give that nod to Henderson. I haven't run those numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's what it would come back with. I don't think. How does Henderson get past Washington at 29? I
don't think. Now that there's reports too, I saw some stuff.
I don't see it.
Dan Quinn was saying, and I mean, like, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's a first round pick. I'm just saying that if he's not, I think that.
But the thing is, we're not going to be. We can't have nice things. You know how the draft works. You know what's good. He's going to end up in Houston.
Yeah,
he's going to. It would be fine if he was with the Chargers. Yeah, as if Najee. I mean, what's more likely, that the Chargers draft running back or the Steelers draft running back with those back-to-back picks in the first round? I think it's more likely the Chargers go.
I think it's at least close.
They have a lot fewer needs. They get everything teed up.
Odds. Yeah, I think odds wise, it's the Steelers are a little bit ahead, but it's not by much at all. That's just.
But I don't buy that.
Yeah, you're right. I'm saying that it's fine to have the opinion that they wouldn't, because I think that odds makers wouldn't even really disagree with that. The one thing I'll say about Cam Ward, and where I actually would push back a little bit with what Reeves evidently said, and going with the running backs, typically in Superflex with quarterbacks, you get a free first year look at these guys where their market value. I agree from the standpoint that a running back's like an RB1 season is going to be more valuable than almost anything that hypothetically Cam Ward could create, right? Hypothetically,
especially because he's not super mobile.
Yeah, like median outcome wise, I definitely think an RB1 season is going to be more valuable than what Cam Ward brings. Now, if you look at ceiling, maybe you can make a different argument, but if you look at median outcome, but what I'll say is from a market value perspective, so not production standpoint, but a market value perspective, quarterbacks that have great draft capital in Superflex, they maintain market value better than almost any other asset in fantasy football year over year. You can see a running back drop in value year over year if that running back, especially if you get a first round running back who doesn't get any work, which usually doesn't happen, but let's say second round running back that doesn't get any work, that guy can fall in market value in the way the market's viewing him. Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson, these guys maintained market value. Justin Fields, after horrific rookie seasons as passers. Like if you get Cam Ward, you're not only going to be able to see, what if he is really elite? Because that's still in his range of outcomes. What if he is really, really, really good? Okay, then you have Cam Ward and you have a top 5 dynasty asset. And then if he's not good, you're still going to have an exit for Cam Ward after year 1, because dynasty managers love making excuses for quarterbacks. And so we will be able to say, okay, he had a pretty mediocre rookie season. Now's the time to get off that guy.
And he was the 101.
Yeah.
Right. The 101 has a special place. Now, Bryce Young ruined that for the first time, right? Where we always could,
maybe
whether
not.
it's Jameis Winston, whether it's Jared Goff, we've had 101s flame out and then come back to life. It's tale as old as time. With Bryce Young, unfortunately, it could happen, right?
Yeah.
He could be fully rejuvenated this year, but there was a measurable dip in his dynasty value after just one bad season.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a confluence of factors. It was so bad, and the Panthers are so inept as a front office, and then no receiver. I really think the moon and the stars aligned for the first time to see a 101 quarterback lose value after one bad season. But you're right, that other than that, it's never happened.
It doesn't happen.
So,
yeah.
And Cam Ward has a hell of a lot more upside than Bryce Young because Cam Ward has a lot more size. Cam Ward has an incredible arm. Cam Ward comes from a wishbone offense in high school where he wasn't recruited at all, and then had to sort of circumnavigate his way to Miami over the course of 5 years. And he's still developing. And so there is a little of that Josh Allen, like there's still some development left to go. And there is some real, next level arm talent there where I have to get some upside excitement in order to make a move. If I've already said I'm going Travion Henderson over Cam because of the upside, because I've been sold on that upside. And again, I don't want to speak for Rich. Like he got me from Cam Ward to pivot to Henderson, but I couldn't go all the way and pivot to Hampton and Judkins over Cam Ward. I just couldn't do it because there is some real upside in Superflex if Cam Ward hits. I want access to that.
I would say that and this may be a cop-out answer, but this is the truth. And even in my pre-draft prospect guide, I had Ward and Hampton in the same tier because Hampton had projected first-round draft capital. If Hampton and Travion Henderson go in the first round, and Cam Ward obviously goes 101, I would likely rank them in the same tier, in the same bucket, and say, look, you can make this decision based on what you're like. Very, very rarely am I going to make
needs-based decision at that point.
Right. Like very rarely do I do that in rookie drafts. I'm usually just trying to gobble up value and just gobble up the best player, or whatever, because you can trade for need. But when it comes to a situation like that, where I think that there is reason to go either direction, I think it's fine to say, hey, look, I have two and a half, two really good starting quarterbacks in Superflex and maybe a decent enough QB3. I'm not going to force the issue with Cam Ward. I'm just going to get because we know that first round running backs dominate in fantasy football. We know that if Omarion Hampton goes in round 1, there's a 2/3 chance that he's going to give us an RB1 season across the first 3 years of his career. And that's based on history since 2011. And the only guys who have gotten hurt, or they were CEH and Sony Michel. It's like CEH. That's basically what we're looking at for first round running back. So I would take that safety all day long because we know the upside is also there because RB1 seasons matter that much. But you brought up Quinshon Judkins. I'm curious if you do view Judkins similarly to Hampton as players, and then also Kaleb Johnson. Let's throw Kaleb Johnson in here and talk about him. Are there any, because to me, analytically, I have way more concerns about Quinshon Judkins and not really Kaleb Johnson actually as much as pass catchers, but Quinshon Judkins, his pass catching profile scares me more actually than Omarion Hampton's pass catching profile. So I'm curious if you are there, or do you just see this as what I was talking about earlier, as these are both in that middle bucket where they're just, maybe there's going to be a season where they see a 12% target share, and then maybe 1 year it's 8% because they're not going to be elite guys doing that skill and having that skill.
Didn't Carlos Hyde have a 76 catch season?
I don't remember.
I think so. Something like that. Right. And the lesson we've learned again and again, and most recently with Kenneth Walker, is that there is a range of outcomes that is very system-based with 98% of running backs. And it's very difficult to detangle the talent from the system when you're talking about, does the quarterback run? What is where is the check down and the read progression and all these things? So it becomes a very difficult game to play, where what I'd rather do is say, is this guy a truly special target earner out of the backfield?
Right.
Does he get downfield? Is the target depth not ordinary? Is the target share just disproportionate year over year? If that's the case, then we could be looking at a Breece Hall, Kamara level receiver out of the backfield, and then put those guys in like the special category. And then again, the lesson we've learned from the Carlos Hydes. Okay, Carlos Hyde, I don't think it was. It might have been
59 receptions.
I think it was that would have been the targets. I think he had a 75 target season, and in that season he had 59 receptions.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. If anyone, so some young people out there listening to the show that weren't paying attention to NFL football in 2017 or even care who Carlos Hyde is, this is not a pass catcher, guys. This is a Kenneth Walker level guy. He more than doubled his single season high for catches in this 1 year just because of the system he happened to be playing in. Therefore, I don't parse Judkins versus Kaleb Johnson as receivers. It's just very difficult. It's really a fool's errand.
Mm-hmm. So here's how I do want to talk about the receiving stuff a little bit, because like I said, in the ZAP model now, I'm looking at breakout score from the standpoint of receiving yards per team pass attempt. And then the other main production metric that the model looks at is prorated best season reception share. Okay.
Because when guys score well in that metric, it puts them in a whole different class of player in the NFL.
Yeah. And it's also
supercharges their range of outcomes. That's why that's so powerful.
It's also to me, this isn't just about finding pass catchers, it's about finding talent, because well-rounded players are generally more talented than the 2-down back in college, right? So this is also
apply. You could do that with receivers with special teams.
That's exactly what I do. We'll get to Jalen Nolan in a little bit, but
yeah,
like I look at Omarion Hampton, his best season in reception share was 17.9%, which is that's where we see elite running backs get to. I'm not saying that Omarion Hampton has that general skill set of being, lining up all over the field, because I think that's another way that you could look at these receivers, from how they're going to translate to the NFL is, are you going to be able to line them up in the slot, maybe out wide at times, or are they going to just be able to catch swing passes, or are they going to be zeros like Gus Edwards, And so like Omarion Hampton, I'm not saying he's going to line up as a slot, but I do think that there is some reliability there, or at least there's a talent signal there showing you that maybe he's not going to be beefed up as a receiver, but he's at least beefed up as a player, right? Because he's getting that production as a pass catcher. And the really interesting thing, I gotta call this out here, because, I've talked about Kenneth Walker so much in the past, and I had written threads about it on Twitter about how his best season reception share was horrible in college. We know this, like it was not good, right? Well, I built breakout score for running backs this offseason. I changed it from total yards per team play to receiving yards per team pass attempt. So it was only receiving. Kenneth Walker has one of the best breakout scores at running back in the model right now. And the reason for that is that no, he didn't get a lot of work through the air, but when he did really, really well with that work.
He's awesome in the screen game. You can't stop him.
Similar to what we see.
Do you want to try to tackle him in a screen pass situation?
So his yardage totals were there, which is why his age-adjusted profile from a receiving perspective is there. And then you bring up
just so everybody knows, we didn't talk about this before the show.
We didn't. No, we didn't.
Okay, this may seem like this is choreographed.
None of it is.
No.
We're literally, this is like if we were hanging out.
It's just,
yeah.
I know.
But here's the thing.
I could, no look past, my friend.
Here's the thing. Carlos Hyde, you bring up Carlos Hyde. His metrics sucked across the board, right? His breakout score was like 26, is bad. And then the other point to that with Hyde, he didn't get to that number as a receiver until like year 4 or year 5, right? It was not immediate in his career. And the model is looking at the first 3 years, because that's what's going to be most important, from a dynasty perspective and such. And I look at Quinshon Judkins, and his marks are below average across the board, both in reception share. Now, obviously, take that kind of with a grain of salt because his final season was with Travion Henderson. And then breakout score was also below average. And the only guy that we've seen over the last 15 years that have come out, the only two players, I think one was Jerick McKinnon, who didn't have the profile because he didn't play a traditional running back position in college. And the other one was Doug Martin, who had top 100 draft capital with as low of scores as Quinshon Judkins had, who hit a 10% or better target share during their first 3 years in the league. And so I am more concerned about Judkins as a receiver based on what he accumulated in college than, to me, even a Kaleb Johnson, because Kaleb Johnson, at least in the last season, when you give it context of Iowa being the sixth, run heaviest team in the country, his reception share was fine. His breakout score is fine. I just don't think he's going to be, I think Omarion Hampton is more of a plus probably as a receiver in the NFL than Kaleb Johnson is going to be. Right. But I do have some concerns.
Yeah, I think you have to have Hampton ahead of Judkins for that reason.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. Like, and draft capital aside, and then you layer on draft capital and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go Hampton over Judkins, of course, because of this draft capital thing, Well,
I mean, Judkins looks pretty impressive. I mean,
his age-adjusted rushing profile is insane.
Cannibalize a truly elite talent in Henderson.
Yeah, and he played with Zach
Henderson
Evans.
Showed up in his sophomore season. He was like,
yeah,
that matters.
Yeah, no.
Right? In the breakout finder, we have with the teammate score.
Same,
It's very interesting. So, and size adjusted, Quinshon Judkins had the best athletic profile in this class among running backs. Jeanty didn't test, as we know. And they're going to put up similar fantasy points. It's just how you get there. One guy's going to get there with a few more catches. One guy's going to get there with more breakaway, yards and touchdowns. Like so Judkins' his best comp on player profiler, Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. Makes sense, right? You'll have fantasy seasons where Nick Chubb has a very similar profile, very similar fantasy point output, I should say, to a running back with an all-purpose profile who's catching more passes, but he just doesn't have the big playability like Judkins has. Yeah. And that's what Kaleb Johnson's missing.
Yeah.
He's missing that big playability. So you're not getting the 40-yard touchdown, but you're getting a bunch more catches and it all equals out.
Yeah. It all plays together. Okay, I'm gonna group a bunch of guys together here so we can move forward with some of the other running backs in this class. Which fringe day 2 or day 3 player excites you most from this list? And I'm gonna add Cam Scadaboo to this list as well. Okay, so God. Cam Scadaboo, Dylan Sampson, Bashal Tootin, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal, RJ Harvey, Damian Martinez, or maybe someone else that could go day 2 that excites you the most.
Man. They're all Tootin and Harvey and Neal are all exciting for different reasons.
Yeah, they're very different. Yeah.
Right. So Tootin, bottom line is you run a 4-3-2. The NFL is going to like that. They're going to draft him in day 2, most likely. If he falls to day 3 running a 4-3-2, there's something the NFL does not like about this guy.
Right. That's actually, I looked at this while I was doing research for the guide this year. A lot of the things, because I care most, we all care most about day 1 and day 2 picks in fantasy, right? At the end of the day. And so the model is focused on that archetype most. And when you get to day 3, a lot of the things that matter for day 2 backs don't matter that much anymore or as much for the day 3 guys, because like you said, more and more teams have now passed on that player. That's a signal that something's going wrong.
They're super flawed in some way that we can't even perceive, whether it's pass pro, whether it's just can't get on the field for whatever reason.
Interviews, who knows?
And it could be the interview process, could be whatever it is. It's the Israel Abanikanda corollary, right? Sure. It's the Israel Abana corollary. So it's what it is. You can't wish it to be true that the NFL is going to want to unlock this guy just because he's best comparable to CJ Spiller. There's something else going on. We just have to deal with it. We're not coaches.
Yeah.
Okay. RJ Harvey might be in a similar situation. So these guys are pretty similar in that they're incredible athletes. They caught enough passes, but you wish they caught more and you wonder why they didn't. So they're very similar in that way. I think one of Tootin or RJ Harvey will go in the second round, or maybe third round, but ideally second round, and day 2, whatever it is. And I'm going to be very excited about that guy. Devin Neal is just a much better player. Devin Neal is a great football player. He just didn't run like those guys. I would love Devin Neal. If Devin Neal ran a 4.4 flat, I would love him.
It'd be over.
I'd be over the moon for Devin Neal. So because 40 time and speed matters a lot more for running backs than it does for receivers, sometimes we could accidentally end up fading a guy that doesn't deserve to be faded as much, like a Devin Neal. And so I shook it off, right? I shook off my disappointment of the Devin Neal 40 time. And I was like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Right. This guy has average speed. As long as he can hit the crease, as long as he has good vision and contact balance and all those things, we're going to look up and be like, this guy's making plays left and right in the NFL. And we know him to be a good receiver. He is actually in the upper percentile of just efficient receivers in this class. So, and he was just a metronome of a producer. I mean, I love that. I love that it was like the exact same stat, 1,400 yards, boom, 1,400 yards, boom. Like you can set your watch by it. 1,400, actually close to 1,500 total yards, all-purpose yards, and 10+% target share, 17 touchdowns every year, 25 catches every year. So I really like him, and I think that that's an opportunity. So I'm seeing the 4.58 40 time as an opportunity to buy Devin Neal in all formats, not just Dynasty. But I think Devin Neal's I think he's the type of running back the NFL teams will like. He'll go a little bit earlier, and no one's allowed to be surprised when he goes earlier than Tootin and Harvey. And us analytics guys are like, that doesn't make any sense. And they're like, well, yeah, but he's way better in pass pro, and he did better in the interviews. And it's like, you know what? Like, you weren't there for the process, and you analytics guys have to deal with it. And I'm like, okay.
I'll tell you this, in the ZAP model likes Devin Neal. Like right now, he has I have draft capital delta, which looks at a player's score versus where he's projected to get drafted, and it gives him a plus or minus, sort of a risk profile. He's a neutral risk profile, but he's almost a low risk profile because his receiving numbers are strong, his weight is, his size is good, all that stuff. RJ Harvey actually doesn't look that good in the model. Mostly, I feel like his age is being a little bit ignored right now. He's over 24 years old right now. And that's something that I don't think we can totally ignore, especially when it comes to the way that a team might invest in that player. But that's why Chase Brown was his top comp, because Chase Brown was not the youngest guy either coming out of school. He wasn't 24, though.
It's a very good comp. It's a very close comp.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys, like RJ Harvey has a lot of comps.
Yeah.
But the closest, and it's very close, is Chase Brown for sure. Devin Neal's comp is Kareem Hunt, and that's just it's a very interesting comp. And at running back in Dynasty, you have 3 extra years of your prime. Remember, the age apex for production in fantasy football for running back is 24.5 years old.
Right, which is RJ Harvey's 24.2 May 1st.
He's already at the age apex.
Yeah.
I think with these running backs all producing out in their late 20s, this might get pushed out to say age 25 or 25.5, especially if guys like, Aaron Jones and Saquon will have big years again. So we'll see what happens with that. But I mean, Devin Neal being 21 years old is also attractive in that he's got a lot of room to grow, where RJ Harvey's kind of he's a fully formed football player at this point. That all said, that's mostly anecdotal, because the data suggests that your age at draft for a running back is almost negligible, where your age at draft for a receiver, much more predictive.
Yeah, let's talk. We'll get to receivers really quick. Do you have any day 3 running backs that you want to shout out before we get to the wideouts?
I just think there's a bunch of these guys that are very similar that I like. Jarquez Hunter.
Love Jarquez Hunter. Love him.
Right. There's guys like Jarquez Hunter where I'm trying to find the guys that, hey, if they were in another class running a 4.44, best comparable to DeAndre Swift, with, again, one of these profiles where he has the 1,200 yard season, he has the 20 catch season, he does the things you're looking for, just enough receiving skills where he can be a 50 catch guy, depending on the system.
Yeah.
And he's coming from an SEC school, and you could just see an NFL team anointing him as the backup. And then this is something I don't hear hardly anyone talking about, is because the injury rate was so wild for running backs last year, just nothing like we've ever seen, where of the top 24, 25 running backs in fantasy points per game, only one of them, missed more than 3 games.
Yeah.
You never see that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It has never been done. And so what I think the value of these free square running backs has been lost on, I think, the fantasy community slightly, where it used to be. And that's part of the case. That's part of my Cam Ward case, is that, if I'm in a Superflex rookie draft and I go Cam Ward and then running backs, I'm feeling pretty good about it. What's the alternative? I just go all running backs,
right?
Like, okay,
right.
And then I look at Origins, the all rookie tournament on Fast Draft last year, and it was a quarterback with all running backs,
sure,
that won it all, right? So it's just the guys like Jarquez Hunter. You only have so many roster spots in Dynasty, and I'm very interested in banking the value on all of these Jarquez Hunters. And that also then, again, gives you the opportunity to take a shot in the first round on a guy like a Cam Ward, or in like single quarterback. If you wanted to do, a Travis Hunter, you could do that.
Look at you. Another segue right into wide receiver. Travis Hunter. Do you have any concerns about the talent profile there? Because I think that you would probably agree that if you look at his analytical profile, just the analytical profile, you remove all of the additional stuff that Travis Hunter went through in terms of playing 90 snaps a game or whatever, and barely being in the wide receiver room and all that kind of stuff.
So amazing.
I mean, objectively, Travis Hunter's analytical profile as a wide receiver is not that strong for a first round wide receiver. But
no, you wish he would have done more as a sophomore.
Right. That's what I'm
saying. He's not actually that young. He should be a year younger.
Right.
So there's a few things, because he transferred from Jackson State, and there's it's just one of those things where part of it is that the way these models are, they're backward looking, and you just didn't have all this NIL money creating all these transfers and the transfer portal and all these things, and you have guys staying in school longer. So there's a little bit of incongruence.
I agree
with the landscape now, where you can't hold his age against him like you maybe could have 5 years ago with Travis Hunter. So that I give some leeway there.
Yep.
There were a couple other receivers are going to end up on NFL rosters on Colorado, so that matters. His teammates score, so in the fact that he's catching the ball at like a 77% rate, there's a lot to like there. But is he an elite wide receiver prospect? No, there is not an elite wide receiver prospect in this class. I think it's very close between him and Tet McMillan. Tetaroa McMillan is a great receiver. It's boring to talk about him because he's been there. It's been the narrative around Hunter and what position will he play, I think, has really hurt Tet in that you take him for granted. Where I think that you're right. They're right there. They're neck and neck. Whenever I hear someone say, well, Hunter by far and away the best if he were to dedicate himself to receiver, I'm like, well, that's an unfalsifiable hypothetical. We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
The numbers say no. The numbers say McMillan and Hunter are like right. They're the same.
Oh, I think the numbers, in my opinion, favor McMillan from a production standpoint, and that he looks better, at least in terms of breakout score in my model. He looks better. If you look at yards per route run, he'll look better. If you look at receiving yards per team pass attempt, he looks better. And I'm adjusting that for program strength, but both programs aren't they're not SEC programs, and so.
Hunter did only play 9 games 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it'll all. I'm looking at the prorated stuff too, and things like yards per route run obviously is going to be per route run. And look, anyone who's listened to the podcast over the last 2 months, where I stand with Travis Hunter, where I'm like, draft capital, take the wheel. I understand this is the most unique circumstance probably ever that we've ever come across, where we have never seen a Heisman winner like this play both ways and be as good as he is playing corner as he is wide receiver. And not only that, but Colorado, I think some of the metrics aren't going to fully capture. You mentioned the other Colorado wideouts that are going to be going pro. That's one thing. So teammate score obviously, matters here, but also they ran like a lot of 4-wide sets where we know that like things like yards per route run, even yards per team pass attempt aren't going to be as strong in that environment versus if you had, 2 wide receivers on the field, playing alongside that player. So like I've gotten to the point where I'm okay with pushing this aside a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, man, even with the lower production scores in the ZAP model, because of the draft capital and because Tet is kind of like, I think Tet's good. Like he's a really solid wide receiver. I agree with you. Like the narrative really has been weird and it's whatever. But like, I think that if he falls a little bit, just a little bit, then Travis Hunter's just going to be the wide receiver 1 in the model because of draft capital at the end of the day, even if the marks for Tet look better, in that model. So
if there was ever an excuse to go tinker with the model, it's Hunter.
Come on. Right. If you're going to want to overfit, yeah, sure. Go ahead and
well, no, you could discount you could say, well, what if you didn't play corner? You'd be,
sure. I'll throw
knock off
a
5 spots of draft capital. You can
sure.
You can add some receiving stats because he was so tired.
Whatever fits our narrative is what we'll do.
You can do whatever you want with him. That's the thing.
Right.
I do want some exposure to him, especially in single quarterback. I want some exposure.
I do too. Yeah. So Tet McMillan, do you think he's more Drake London or Cortland Sutton?
No, I think he's more Drake London. And the nice thing about where he's going to get drafted is that he's going to get drafted like a Drake London draft capital, which will give him the opportunity to play more slot. It'll give him the opportunity to be more of a queen chess piece. The problem that a lot of these receivers have is they end up in a place where they're an auxiliary option. They're forced to just play a role for the good of the team, and they don't get that featured treatment.
And sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good. Like Jordan Addison, right? Going to play with Justin Jefferson is perfect.
But Jordan Addison.
No. What I'm saying is I'm agreeing because the thing that I don't think people think about is that when a wide receiver gets drafted later in the first round, then he's going to a better team and team environment, but that environment could very easily still include other stud wide receivers where they aren't that queen as you're talking about, right? Whereas when you get a stud wide receiver going in the top 10 or top 15, then that player is more than likely going to be sort of the sole focus of that. Look at Brian Thomas last year, where
you want him going to a place where there's not going to be a lot of target competition and they're going to have to move him around the formation
and let him see what he's all about.
And try to get him the football and put him in the best possible position to succeed, as Drake London has been, right? Or it's, Terry McLaurin, right? Yeah. Terry McLaurin was always used this way and was always a quarterback away from being an absolute smash. So it was something last year, you have to admit, can we just talk about this for just 2 seconds before we go back to this?
Sure.
There were so many no-brainers that fantasy gamers left on the field. There was so much left on the field last year, from Saquon to Derrick Henry to Terry McLaurin, just baffling ADPs.
Mm-hmm.
And almost like a conspiracy, like I don't understand the forces that were suppressing these ADPs when we've been begging for the forces to align to propel these players to a particular place. It all happens exactly how we would have planned it.
Sure.
And then you can still, as of kickoff, week 1, get McLaurin at least a round later than any logical person would have drafted. How was it possible?
No. I had McLaurin pretty high in my rank. I had him on a lot of teams last year. The funny thing though, with the running backs, not Saquon so much, but Derrick Henry in particular, I had Derrick Henry ranked ahead of Kyron Williams, which was the opposite in consensus. Consensus had Kyron Williams ahead of Derrick Henry. And typically, historically, those types of moves are borderline league winning type moves, because usually one of those two guys will not come close to living up to expectation. But last year, running back was so good that they were both good. There was no wrong choice at the end of the day. I finally was like, I'm done, being, because there were years aside from the last couple, but there were last few, but there were years where I was wrong about Derrick Henry, wrong about him. I'm like, I'm not doing that this year. I'm not doing it. And then it was at the expense of, a Kyron Williams, let's say. And so I didn't have much Kyren Williams, but I had Derrick Henry.
Me either.
But yeah, I know you're a hater, Kyren Williams hater. But like it's just interesting because at running back, those decisions when you're just looking within the position, obviously if you went running back over wide receiver, it was a win. But at running back itself, it was like, well, they were all good. So
yeah, they were all good. We're never gonna. So that's the sad thing is we're not gonna get that again.
We're not. No,
we're not gonna get the no-brainers, the no-brainer ADP inefficiencies from last year. We're not gonna see that again, everybody. Sorry.
Yeah.
But you if you didn't get a bunch of Saquon in the second round and Derrick Henry in the third round and McLaurin in the fifth round, you're not gonna get. That's gone. You'd have to get a time machine. Yeah. Like we're not gonna get that again. The one thing though on Fast Draft with this Flex 4 game is Judkins, Henderson, and Johnson, those 3 rookie running backs all going in the final round. That is the closest thing I think there is right now to an ADP inefficiency. But with these, so talk again about the receivers. It is an interesting thing where if you're an X receiver, where you go from a landing spot matters more. So it's going to, like, for example, Higgins versus Knowles, really where it's interesting. And so I think basically I very rarely am I out here drafting receivers in round 2 or round 3 of a dynasty rookie draft. You've been in these rookie drafts with me. You know what I'm doing.
Sure.
I'm going running back.
Sure.
Right. But we now may be at a jump the shark inflection point where now everyone's doing that, where somehow these Iowa State receivers can leak into the third round in Superflex.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, here's the other thing that I want to add to that is if you're doing a draft pre-NFL draft, don't be overconfident with where you think the running backs will be drafted, because we know that if a running back falls to day 3, or a wide receiver will fall to day 3, it's bad news, right? And so we have more confidence that the Iowa State guys are going to go day 2, maybe Jaden Higgins sneaks into end of round 1, which some people have said, but we have confidence that the Iowa State guys are going to go day 2, which means
if Xavier Leggett can leak into the first round, then absolutely Higgins can.
I know, but my point is, if these running backs are going to be, if they're flimsy, like I listed off earlier, all of those fringe day 2, day 3 running backs, Cam Scadaboo or Bashal Tutin, Dylan Sampson, whoever, right? Don't have too much confidence with where they're going to get drafted pre-draft. Post-draft is where we can be a lot more confident and see a lot of the running backs going earlier and such in these rookie drafts, because we're going to know that they got that capital or not. I think that's been a little like my pre-draft rankings are more wide receiver heavy than my post-draft rankings will be.
You want to have some fun?
Sure.
You know how people talk about Jalen McMillan?
Yeah.
And how you should have known about Jalen McMillan. And if you weren't pouting Jalen McMillan in your rookie draft, just because you have some process that favors running backs and rookie drafts, that you're a fool.
Sure.
Right. It was obvious, right? Can we just, for the day 3 receivers last year, can I just name them? Do you mind?
Sure.
Starting in the 4th round. I'll make this very quick. Troy Franklin. Remember him? Javon Baker.
Oh gosh.
Tez Walker. Okay. It keeps going and going and going and going. Oh, here's one. How about this guy? How about Jacob Cowing? And I can just go down the list. And this is every year.
Yeah.
This is every year. And this is not even talking about Jermaine Burton and third round picks.
Right.
Right. That also that had a lot of hype and went absolutely nowhere. And their dynasty value has been vaporized.
Right.
And you can just go down the board. Last year, the year before that, year before that, year before that.
But people
I give people all the respect in the world if they drafted Jalen McMillan.
Yeah.
But as many hits as I've had, I have no confidence in my ability to find that guy.
Yeah. It's tough. Even like I think that we can we can be better than consensus. And I did a study on this actually, like over the last month or two on day 3 picks. We can be better than consensus at finding and spotting who those guys are going to be. Yeah. I have confidence in that, but I don't think that people realize that, number one, how difficult it is, but number 2, when you look at rookie draft ADP, and I looked at the data, this is from Dynasty League Football's ADP data, there is zero correlation when you're looking at day 3 picks in rookie drafts versus how they perform across their first 3 years in the league. So a 4th round day 3 guy is very similar to a 3rd round day 3 guy. I'm talking about 3rd round and 4th round rookie draft pick, right? So like, and you think about it and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Puka Nacua was a 4th round, rookie pick. Kyron Williams was a 4th round rookie pick. Isaiah Pacheco was a 4th round rookie pick. The guys who are hitting, even Bucky Irving fell into the latter rounds, in rookie drafts last year. And so like, I think it's important to remember to not be overconfident in day 3 picks.
Oh, but they might say, well, you just listed a bunch of 4th rounders. Well, Jalen McMillan was a 3rd rounder. Yeah, you mean the same round as Malachi Corley?
Right.
Is that the same round?
Hard. Yeah,
is that, and we talked about Jermaine Burton already. Is that the same round as Roman Wilson? Right? Because was that the round? Wait, let me look. Was it the same round as Luke McCaffrey? Oh yeah.
I don't think that people even realize 2nd round hit rates at wide receiver.
Oh, like dude, it's freaking tough out there, man.
It's really tough. It's tough to be a good wide receiver is what we're basically coming down to.
It's a tough position to play at a super high level. My goodness.
All right. I got to ask you about Matthew Golden because I know that you probably see a really, really crappy production profile. Are you outright fading or are you seeing the market doing that too harshly? And you're like, you know what? I might actually be in.
This is the thing, man. I haven't seen this in forever. I mean, it's been since
Kadarius Toney.
I think Kadarius Toney because he's going to go exactly where Kadarius Toney was drafted, like the exact same draft slot.
Yeah.
But Kadarius Toney was a running back turned receiver,
right? Gadgety,
who went to the Senior Bowl and wasn't even that impressive there. Matthew Golden is coming out at age 21. The NFL told him, listen, you don't need to go back to school, even though really he only was a featured option in the second half of the college season because he transferred from Houston and he came to a team that was loaded with talent.
That had Isaiah Bond that transferred too, and they wanted to give Bond that opportunity. Yeah.
And others.
Yeah,
right?
and others. Right.
And it's like, okay, fundamentally, he's got some really nice comps on Player Profiler. The best one, Santana Moss. Santana Moss, also on a loaded team, basically was the Texas Longhorns of his era, the Miami Hurricanes. So Moss is on a loaded team, right? Not a big producer, runs a 4-3, plays on special teams. This archetype exists.
Yeah. Did you guys have a Lad McConkey comp?
No, I think I don't know what it would have been. Lad McConkey actually ran a sub 4.40.
Yeah, but he also the differentiation. So the Zap model is not looking at yards per route run, and that's where Lad McConkey thrived because Georgia wasn't using him a lot, and that's why his numbers were suppressed a little bit. But that was the top one for Golden in my stuff. Now he had bad ones outside, but again, I don't want to throw a blanket on Matthew Golden and just say there's absolutely no chance that this profile can hit because I think that there is still somewhat of a chance that it can work. And the fantasy market's reflecting that.
It very much could happen. It very much could happen. I mean, dude, his similarities to Santana Moss are pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But
that's a fun one.
It is he's a fun player. Mm-hmm. And listen, if I was in the market for Kadarius Toney, I admit it. If you're going to have a first-round receiver with athleticism fall to the end of the second round
in rookie draft,
and it's between him and some tight end, right? Then I'm going to be interested.
You're going to see Matthew Golden, and we're already seeing it. But I'm saying even post-draft, you're going to see Matthew Golden in the second round of Superflex rookie drafts. And when you get if he goes in the top half of the first round, and you're getting that kind of capital in round 2. Now we can always point, what about Henry Ruggs? What about Kadarius Toney? I get all that, but there's
a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
I get it. There's a ton of them. I get it.
But don't overstate
hits, though.
Yeah. Don't overstate what a second round rookie pick is, and what that means in terms of actual value.
And again, we're in this new world where they're always transferring and trying to pick up a new offense.
Yeah.
It's just different, man. Every guy you look at now came from somewhere else.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I give him a bit more benefit of the doubt than most because he didn't play a full season as a sophomore. Then he goes to Texas and then he thrived in some of the biggest games. So there are some things that you can't, home in on exactly just by looking at the overarching stat line. You can't see it.
Yeah.
You got to go in. You got to go into the game log. You got to act. So that's where having like a Matt Waldman on, right? So okay, to bring this full circle, if I were the man I was 10 years ago, I would hate Matthew Golden. Right. I would be in shaming everyone that even tried to entertain this notion that he could be good. Right. Where now I've seen some things.
You see the gray area.
Right. And I've been through a lot, right? With Jeff Janis and so many things I've been through. Mostly late round guys betraying me and getting run over by first round picks. That, okay, I'm now in a much better place. Okay, let's hear what the guys at Roster Watch are saying. Let's talk to Matt Waldman and let's start to factor in this a little bit and realize, like, what are you really getting at the end of the second round for those running backs? They're equally, if not more risky.
Look at
this. Because they were a fourth round guy, and what you don't know is the NFL doesn't trust them at all in a lot of situations and is going to play them sparingly as a rookie, and they're going to collapse in value. Just like if Matthew Golden were to bust, but Matthew Golden is always going to have at least a year where you could you could even have unloaded Kadarius Toney, because Kadarius Toney gave you that one game. He had that one 187-yard game
against Dallas, right? Wasn't it against Dallas? Yeah.
And he was actually flippable after a year. So it could be true that Matthew Golden is much easier to flip after a down season than, say, an RJ Harvey would be. And so this is where, I feel myself being a little more tempered with these kinds of decisions. And actually, you actually end up netting a little more upside in your roster this way.
Yeah. First off, I'm really proud of your growth. That was really good to hear. Second, and this is kind of, the analytics world, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, has really driven home the point about early declare status, right? And how early declare status gets signal, and it matters because it's showing us that a player is talented and he's leaving school early because he's so talented and he's able to play at the NFL level, early in his career. The one thing that doesn't get talked about enough with early declare status is that it's limiting that player to not having that extra season in college to accumulate better numbers, right? So Matthew Golden, when we sit here and we compare Matthew Golden's best season in yards per team pass attempt to other wide receivers in college football, those other wide receivers had an extra or more season to accumulate that number, which goes back to RJ Harvey. And my sort of negative, my con to RJ Harvey is that his production profile is also a little bit beefier because he's older, right? He was able to play a little bit more in college, which is fine. Just recognize it, right?
Well, you could really go far with Matthew Golden if you really wanted to.
Right. Because
if you really want to run this thought experiment out, what would a year of Matthew Golden as the alpha with Arch Manning look like?
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, is that we have to think about it not just in terms of this is what this guy did. This is why early declare status and age and such and breakout related metrics are important. Because not only is it showing you that player was able to do something crazy at a young age, which is a signal for talent, but it's also a metric that's not going to be biased based on how many years that player played in college, right? You guys use breakout age, and you can look at dominator to a degree, but breakout age, which is going to be based on dominator rating. And I'll look at breakout score. We're looking at that metric and saying, okay, this is a metric that is going to be universal for all players, because all players are going to be playing at some age, at the collegiate level. Whereas we're not going to get a universal senior year from every wide receiver, because not every wide receiver plays 4 years in college. And so I do want it to be known and thrown out there that when it comes to Matthew Golden and his production profile, we can't just stop and say, and look, I do it too. Like, we all do it, right? Like, I can query and filter and be like, hey, the only wide receivers who have done well with this number are X, Y, and Z, and it's a really low hit rate. But I also, I think it's important to at least throw in that caveat in that context that he only played 3 years in college, and one of them was a transfer year, so it can elevate that player a little bit, which is why early declare status does, give a player a little bit of a boost in the ZAP model.
He's going to go to a good team.
Are we just Matthew Golden first rounder? Is that what we're doing here?
It could be. I mean, what's the best fit is what, Seattle?
Sure.
Because they don't have any speed on the outside.
I mean, look, I think if he ends up going to Dallas, it's going to be great.
I mean,
that's if
he goes to Dallas, that's 12th pick. They have to trade down, I think. If they do pick him at 12, I guess Henry Ruggs was like the 12th pick.
He's been mocked to Dallas plenty of times. I mean, that's where
I just can't get my head around. I can't either. Sometimes to get my head around this.
I can't either, because that means that there's a chance that he would. Yeah, it would be a chance that he would be going over Tet in that scenario. Which
I don't listen. If he goes to, of course, Dallas doesn't have any speed on the outside either. And that's just a better offense. So yes,
right.
I'd love him in Dallas would be really cool.
Yeah.
And him in Seattle, I think, just makes sense. And then, well, see, the thing is, if he goes to, let's say, the thing is, the Broncos really don't have anyone.
They don't. Sean Payton has said, and he talked to Kay Adams about this, that he is not, that he seemed to feel better about the wide receivers than we do.
Good.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that means that whatever running back comes is probably going to see a decent target share. Evan Ingram could have a decent season if he does play the Joker role like that. Yes. And Cortland Sutton will probably be fine. I don't really fully disagree.
But longer term, wouldn't that be a nice spot for Golden if he somehow?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course. I think any
longer term, I think that would be fantastic.
I don't
longer term. Also, Tampa Bay, not the worst place.
Yeah. If you're thinking longer term.
Yeah. Longer term, there's a lot of interesting spots for him. I mean, I think Atlanta would be a massive upgrade over Mooney. There's some interesting spots for him to land.
Sweet. Yeah.
Houston would be cool.
Houston would be great.
I mean, Houston would be great. That we talk about a nice talent configuration
that is just
where you get the proper, like a pure X receiver in Nico Collins. Then you have like a pure Z in Matthew Golden on the other side, stretching the field. Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, they can both get downfield too, because Nico is a field stretcher himself.
But I mean, that would just help Nico, and then oh my god, it would be great.
That'd be great.
It would help Stroud. Oh man, so wow, the draft can't happen fast enough, man.
I know. One player who didn't transfer throughout college was Luther Burden, and the usage that he had at Missouri was interesting. It was very, and I brought this up plenty of times on the show, it's very Wan'Dale Robinson-esque in terms of the, behind the line of scrimmage targets, the screen targets, the, just wasn't what we typically want from in terms of prospecting. Now, I've always viewed this as it's not necessarily a con. It just kind of makes the range of outcomes wider for that particular player, right? Because it's harder to then envision. But when you look at the usage comps, just usage, not production, usage comps, you get Paris Campbell, you get Kadarius Toney, you get Rondell Moore, those kinds of players. So are you in or out on Luther Burden? Like, would you, let me ask you this. If Matthew Golden goes firmly in round one, let's say like 16 to 20th overall, are you going to be drafting Matthew Golden over Luther Burden in rookie drafts?
Is Luther Burden that impressive?
Let's talk about this.
But what am I missing?
Here's my
problem.
You're the sophomore season guy.
I love a good sophomore season.
His sophomore season was incredible.
But you just said there's a thing with these, remember the Big 12?
Sure.
There's been so many of these receivers, and it's not just I can go back to Corey Coleman and Doxson, Josh Doxson, all these guys, but recently Quinton Johnston,
sure,
he was used near the line of scrimmage, and everyone talked about his yak per target was better than any other receiver, and that just doesn't translate that well to the NFL. There's going to be drafts where Burden goes second round, Golden goes first round, and Burden gets drafted before Golden.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen.
I'm just saying, even once the draft capital is locked in, there's still going to be people going with the second rounder, thinking he might be Ladd McConkey, and he ain't Ladd McConkey, man.
No, I don't think that's that. I think that if you want a realistic, both film and analytical, because this was one of Burden's comps in the Zap model for the prospect guide, was Brandon Ayuk, where a lot of the same concerns were there for Ayuk. Sure. Entering the league, yak guy, but he had to work on his craft, right? Remember, he was in the doghouse. Matt Harmon and I talked about this last week on the show, where, you know, he was in the doghouse, like he got better. And I think that Burden, and the thing that Harmon said that I think really resonated with me was that the thing that's in Luther Burden's way, he thinks that Burden, and I don't actually disagree analytically, because my model, if the Zap model, I said this in the guide, if the Zap model had a baby, it'd probably name him Luther, because the breakout score for Luther Burden is incredible because of that sophomore season, and it's not looking at the usage profile. But I more subjectively understand, you know, the range of outcomes here and how scary the downside is. But from an upside perspective, Harmon, and I would agree, thinks that Burden has more upside if he can really bring it together, because there were some plays that he took off, that kind of thing.
Dude,
if he can bring it together, he has the highest upside at wide receiver in this class.
I don't think that's true.
I
get that he's young. The age at draft is super predictive. The fact he's coming out at 21.3. So we have the decimal point on Player Profiler because it really matters.
Yep.
And he was a dominant producer. And then what happened? He took a year off in the year that mattered most. And there's where people that watch the film are saying there were lackadaisical routes at the college level. This is a very bad signal. I mean, his comparable on Player Profiler is Sammy Watkins. And Sammy Watkins was a phenomenal prospect. And I think Burden has a quality breakout rating in our breakout finder, similar to yours, because
he's the best one in the class in mine.
This class is not that impressive.
Sure.
And he just exemplifies a lot of what's wrong with the class, and that if this guy is near the top, you know, again, not blazing speed, good enough. Certainly he was 4.41 is what you were hoping for from him, and he delivered. He gave you that incredible season at Missouri. It's just like, okay, I just can't anymore, man. I'm
You're just not there.
He looks there are tendencies here where you don't know, but what his work ethic is, with Tet McMillan, I don't have any concerns.
Well, he doesn't watch film. Did you hear that? Or
Burden or McMillan?
McMillan. He hates watching film.
Oh, God damn it. Scratch him off the list. I don't know, man. This is why this is why I'm getting chased out of these guys in the first round. Normally, I want to get my receiver in the first round, right? And typically it's a great idea, right? You can get Neighbors in the early part of the round, you can get McConkey at the end of the round, and you're feeling great. And then you can just pound running back. And that's been a very sound methodology for many, many years in single quarterback rookie drafts. I'm having a hard time with this. I'm having a very hard time where I'm like, actually, can I just take Golden in the second round to be done with this? Or can I even wait and take Higgins in the third round?
Look, I think there's definitely an argument to be made if Golden goes in round 1 and he's still like if he's an early to mid Superflex round 2 rookie pick, and Luther Burden is going ahead of some of the early second round running backs we then see that are locked in and they found good landing spots. Like, there's a very easy argument to make that Matthew Golden's a better value out of the 2 wide receivers. There's a very easy argument to make.
I also don't love that he was like the 5-star prospect.
Yeah, I get it. I
don't love it. Like, unfortunately, these are his own expectations, but the track record for these guys, these 5-star prospects that end up underwhelming and then coming out anyway. Oh God.
There are, that's why I said there are things that are very, very red flaggy to this profile, but instead of me saying I'm going to fade this, I think it's more so recognizing the range of outcomes here, where there is a very real chance that this goes maybe not quite Kadarius Toney route. Cause I mean, Toney himself had stuff, off the field and whatnot that was not understood, but maybe not that to that point, but there is, maybe a Paris Campbell direction or something like that. That's in his range of outcomes, sure. But I agree with Harmon that I think that when you look at the sophomore season, when you look at the age adjusted and program adjusted breakout score and production that Luther Burden had, there is no wide receiver in this class with a better ceiling. I think that the floor is much lower than Ted. And how do you want to approach that in your rookie drafts? Do you want to go with an Emeka Egbuka, who might be the safest option in this class? Do you think he's the safest option more so than even a guy like Ted? Or are you more so fading a guy like Egbuka because of that slot probable role that he's going to play?
Guy with the highest ceiling has got to be Higgins, isn't it?
You think?
Higgins has the size and the athleticism and the production.
Look, he drew a Nico comp as one of his top 3 in the Zap model.
It's hard for me to see Burden ever being having a Nico Collins level production in the league.
But I think Burden could be peppered in a way that Malik Neighbors was peppered. It's from a ceiling perspective. It's that same kind of archetype of player where like good yak, ability to just see a lot of the like. I talked about this with Harmon last week, but it's like we ding the players who have this kind of usage tree and profile in college, but then we want that same usage in fantasy because of PPR and such, right? Like that's a good point. It's so strange. Like,
that's a good point.
Well, what if a team uses Luther Burden the exact same way? Then he's awesome in fantasy.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I get it.
So like that's where and honestly, like Malik Neighbors, the way the Giants deployed him was not, I mean, they try to just get him the ball as much as possible, right? And so, like, what if Burden goes to a team that does use that first, like, what if he does get late first round capital and they're more invested and they're like, okay, we're going to use this guy. We're going to deploy him. We have a plan for him. And that plan is a duplicate of what happened at Mizzou. Then all of a sudden you can see this path to him because he has good skills with the ball in his hands. The dude is good after the catch, objectively. And so I just think there's something there, even if the floor is really scary.
Yeah. I'd much rather guys be good in the air while the ball is in the air.
You're just gonna be I'd much rather guys be good and just be
than while they're on the ground with the ball in their hands.
It's all fair. It's all fair.
Yeah.
Do you like?
I'm not going to go as far as Kadarius Toney, but that was the selling point of Kadarius Toney, that he was incredible with the ball in his hands. And,
it was, but Luther Burden's not only has way better production.
I wasn't even going to go there.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying when you say some of these things, I just get triggered a little bit with some of the strengths that these guys show in college, and I'm like, I don't think those strengths translate that well. From an upside standpoint, what I like to see is imagine what if Jaden Higgins, can have some of these nuances in the NFL to get open, like let's say like a Brandon Marshall, and what he could be. That's very exciting. What he can be in contested situations, what he can be, getting leverage on defenders in the red zone, all these things. Then it's much easier for me to see that guy being like a top 10 fantasy option.
Sure.
Whereas, a Burden, it's harder for me to envision it. And he also just has this thing where he seems problematic. And he seems like a guy that's, even if his numbers were incredible, the interview process would lead him to go second round. And just those guys have such a poor track record where it's like, the numbers suggest this guy should be going in the top 10. The NFL says, no, second round. That's not great.
Yeah, we'll see what the draft capital says for sure. I think that's going to go a really long way. To put a bow on the Burden stuff, if you do compare him to the other kind of gadgety usage players that we've seen going with good draft capital over the last couple of years, I'm talking about first or second round over the last handful of years. You get like Paris Campbell, you get Wan'Dale Robinson, you get Kadarius Toney. There's one, Rondell Moore was another one. The difference though between him and those guys, there's two things. Number one, his age-adjusted profile is generally better than all of them. Even though, Wan'Dale and Rondell both had pretty good age-adjusted production profiles, but compared to those two guys, he's much bigger. There's a difference in size there. And so I don't see a scenario where this is like, he's just going to be Wan'Dale Robinson getting these cheap targets in the slot, because Wan'Dale Robinson's a big deficiency of his is literally his size at the NFL level. He can't do as much. And so I do think that there is some intrigue with that as well. Like the usage only takes me, it does give me concerns and raise red flags, but when the production profile, the age adjusted production profile in that sophomore season was as good as his was. And I'm not as concerned about the bad junior year because we've seen other guys in the past like JSN, Alshon Jeffrey, guys who have good sophomore or second years and maybe not have the best third years and junior seasons still thrive. There's really not a difference in hit rate from the research I did with those guys. Basically the peaks matter a lot more than the valleys with these guys, right? And when you see that
still,
peak,
it's a first round pick around then, even in Superflex, you're talking like the 112 he goes.
mm-hmm.
Put that on the block.
It's a tough spot to be. Yeah. It's
a tough spot to be.
Yeah.
There's a big tier break. We know at running back after Kaleb Johnson. If Kaleb Johnson's off the board, my advice is simple. Just put that goddamn pick on the block, move down, around, try to pick up a first rounder next year, or try to pick up a bunch of picks and an upside player, and get the hell out of there. And you'll be happy. You'll get probably a better player in one of these Iowa State receivers, if that's the direction you want to go, or with one of these like super slasher running backs.
So do you think, so I'm going to be probably still a little bit above consensus with Burden, I think, just because the model loves him so much. And I recognize the downside. I recognize it can go south so south.
I wish you all the best with this.
You obviously won't be.
No.
Which is good. I like the disagreement. Emeka Egbuka, are you higher on him than you would be Burden then, I'm assuming?
I know he's safe, but yeah. I mean, the safest guy is actually McMillan. Again,
probably yes, more than likely.
He never gets listed in anything. He's
never.
Just I'm surprised he gets drafted.
Yeah,
right. If Tet McMillan actually gets drafted, it's going to be a shock at this point. I mean, this guy, no one has him at the top of any list on anything. And I'm like, no, he's awesome, and the safest by far. And Egbuka is also safe, but I just don't. He's going to have to land just right, and he's never going to be the super featured guy. And I would rather have Tyler Warren and just take a shot on a true difference making tight end, or get the hell out of there. Is the move.
What about Kyle Williams, who's getting a ton of steam right now? Like in the prospect guide, he was at the time of the release, he was projected to go like 250th to 300th overall in the draft. And now he's up in the top 100 comfortably. Like he's like 90th overall. Do you have any strong feelings about Kyle Williams?
I mean, I love guys that had early breakouts. I love guys that were dominant. Runs a 4.4. I mean, he's a lot more similar to Luther Burden. People want to, I mean, this is again, I'm going arbitrage at receiver this year. You want to twist my arm and put my face in the dirt and make me draft Matthew Golden with a late second, I will. Otherwise, I'm going arbitrage at receiver, and he's the perfect arbitrage receiver.
Yeah. He has an interesting production profile for sure. And then look, I know that we've gone long, so I have two more questions for you. Day 3 wide receiver. Is there any that jump to mind that you are going to be interested in with your arbitrage plays here?
Well, Jalen Knoll better not.
He better not go day 3.
He better not go day 3. That's my big fear. I don't know why he's not more respected. I mean, he again is one of the safer picks. He and Higgins, because they were competing against each other throughout their college careers, they themselves are much safer because of it.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, an interesting thing that's happening there. Ty Felton's pretty interesting.
Okay.
I like Ty Felton. He's very athletic. He's similar to Bo Melton, which is weird because I think they both went to Maryland. Their names rhyme with each other, and they'll probably get drafted Melton went to Rutgers. But they had the exact same sort of color uniforms.
The colors. I do the same thing with colors all the time with the prospecting stuff.
Is it weird? It's in my head.
Yeah.
I think of Rutgers and Maryland. I think of the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had the same color uniforms. They're going to get drafted in the same round. They have the same athletic profiles. And I like Bo Melton, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just an interesting thing to talk about at this time of year. There are going to be players that could be really productive in the NFL, and they will never get an opportunity because they will never be in the, getting enough reps in practice to show coaches and earn an opportunity to move up. And then they're going to end up getting cut. and then they're going to get picked up by another team, and then that other team is they're going to have to reset button again. There are players that just they have to keep hitting the reset button and showing and earning opportunities and showing the coaching staff what they can do in like very, very small windows. And actually, Tom Brady talks about this. He talked about this at Michigan when he was behind Brian Greasy. And he's like, I don't get any opportunities. And then like you get 4 reps with the ones. You need to make every single one of those reps count.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, okay, now I'm going to get 1 extra rep and I'm going to get 1 extra rep. And it's like chipping away. Yeah, because you're there for 5 years.
Right.
And you can eventually become the starter in like year 5.
Right.
Okay. And that's how, but with guys in the NFL, it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
They barely get, so there, I think in every class, there are guys that like if Julius Chestnut, instead of going to Sacred Heart, if he somehow got recruited to go to Alabama, he could have been Najee Harris, right? If things had broke differently for a guy, especially getting to like, that's why I love like the whole situation there in Carolina, because it's like, oh, we have a guy that was an undrafted receiver. You know how rare this is.
Yeah.
Right? For an undrafted receiver from a teeny tiny school to actually rise that quickly up the depth chart. I'm actually trying to trade for him in every league.
Me too.
Every Dynasty league. Jalen Coker, he is. And the funny thing is, he even has a mentor. Like Adam Thielen having having those 4 years in Minnesota where he could climb the depth chart slowly but surely as an undrafted receiver to get to that point. It's just there's got to be every year a handful of players that had things broken differently in their life, in the recruiting process to go to college, whatever it is. Even Cam Ward is an interesting case because Cam Ward was just by the grace of God able to end up where he is now because he was in a wishbone offense in high school and he had a 0 recruiting rating. No colleges were interested in him at all.
Yeah.
Because they never got to see his arm because he just happened to be in a team that was only running the wishbone.
Yeah.
And it's just, we're about to have the NFL draft. It's a week away and there's going to be a couple guys that get drafted late and what could have been had they been drafted in the second round. And then there's going to be these guys that get drafted in the second round that are, were 5-star prospects from the beginning. And they just think that they deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And they're just going to coast through it. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see those guys squander it. Whereas the guy in the 6th round or the guy that went undrafted would have given anything.
Yeah.
With the types of opportunities and practice that guy is getting. So all the more reason to like cheer for a guy like Jalen Coker, but also he's still underrated. It's still, we talk about, hey, let's do a trade where I can trade down. I can trade out of the 112, try to get Jalen Coker in that deal. Like that's the type of move that I would make. And then, a guy, the guy I just talked about from Maryland, Ty Felton, he is one of those guys where he's probably going to go a little bit late. He's probably going to end up on this Bo Melton situation where he's, for whatever reason, going to be behind Romeo Dobbs. And every time he gets an opportunity, he's efficient. And yet he's going to be on a different team the next year. But you can be a Coker if you land just right. But I mean, think about how important landing position is. I can't believe that's still a debate where we have Garrett Wilson getting 160 targets a season and putting up like 13 fantasy points per game because he's competing for targets with Devontae Adams, with the slowest paced quarterback in the league. Yeah, landing spot really matters. And this wide receiver class, there's a lot of guys that I wouldn't touch, like Savion Williams. He's not even a receiver. Yeah, like there's not a lot of depth here. The one guy is Ty Felton and then Torrey Horton.
I like Torrey Horton too.
I think they're adjacent on the player profiler dynasty rankings. But these are two guys that are interesting. They have interesting ranges of outcomes. The best comp for Torrey Horton, by the way, is Robbie Chosen One Anderson, who also went undrafted. So, these are two guys that I like, but the only way I'm drafting them is if I have 2 or most likely 3 picks and I can't just completely load up on running back, if I have 1 pick, let's say in the 4th round or the 3rd round, I'm going running back every time. Yeah. But if I have extra picks, I might dabble on a couple of these receivers. But typically my list is a little bit longer. I can really just Felton and Horton's all I got.
All right, give me one bold take about the draft. It's happening next week before you head out. One bold take.
One bold take. Yes. Well, this is man, I knew this question was coming, right? And I totally spaced on my preparation. My bold prediction is that there is a shockingly few running backs get drafted in the 3rd round. And This is very specific.
It is specific.
This is very specific, but I think that a lot of people are predicting a lot of these running backs to go either 2nd round or 3rd round after the tier break from Kaleb Johnson. I think there's a possibility that all these backs, including Scadaboo, Tootin, all these guys on down the list, end up going 4th and 5th round, and the NFL does not like them as much as we, the analytics crowd, does. That we love the 40 times. We love these box stuffing profiles that they're giving us, but I think there's a lot more running backs in this class that the NFL believes are flawed. You don't hear a lot of NFL teams expressing the excitement about this running back class like you do in fantasy football. That gives me a little bit of pause. And my worry is that a lot of these running backs we like are going to all fall into day 3. So that is that I'm going to go ahead and say that's a bold prediction. I think day 3 is going to be very exciting because we're all going to be like in this state of shock that like more running backs didn't go on day 2. And then it's going to be bang, 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 bang in the 4th round.
Well, we've done it. This is officially the longest late round podcast or late round perspectives in history. You've done. I didn't expect it to not be. I think we knew that going in. That's why I brought it up at the top. But I appreciate your time. It was great chatting, great breaking down this class with you. And reminiscing a little bit. Let everyone know what you're up to, what they can see with Fast Draft and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Fast Draft is the app, the new bestball app that is accessible to everyone that plays fantasy football. Go to the App Store, Google Play, get Fast Draft, and use code Podfather. You get a $50 deposit match when you use code Podfather. And we're about to roll out a brand new rookie draft. The last rookie draft just filled because this thing's so damn popular. But we are going to be rolling out a rookie draft that's going to be happening during the draft. Nice. So whereas, it's not easy to find best ball games and contests during the NFL draft, we're going to have multiple, the Flex 4 game, and we're going to have this special Origins tournament. So stay tuned for that. Follow at Fast Draft app on social media to learn more. We spend all this time talking about rookies. You can take that knowledge and go make some money on Fast Draft.
And I can be found on Twitter at LateRoundQB, all the stuff that I offer over on LateRound.com. Appreciate everyone for sticking around for this longer show. I hope you guys got something out of it. I'm sure that you did. Thanks again to Matt, and thanks for tuning in.